now welcome to the March 5th Raymond Board of Selectmen meeting. Come to order, please. Do we want to first take a vote on
I did not see him. I don't know if he was
I think that's an appropriate thing to do at this time, yes.
Can we get a motion on that?
We can do it right now.
Yeah, that's what I just...
Take it out of order. And
Yeah.
yep, my consent.
Is it motion seconded?
I'll make a motion to accept the planning board recommendation. Second.
All in favor? Sorry, didn't ask for discussion. I think we've had that.
You'll hear enough of us tonight, so I think you're all set.
Okay, it's carried.
So that will be sent on to the town meeting?
That will be on the town meeting warrant, correct.
Thank you.
Can I ask what your recommendation is for town meeting for approval?
To accept the planning board recommendation.
Okay.
No, this is what we took that out of order and we're going.
Yes, Joe Kazar should be possibly here somewhere
Lonnie seconded.
to speak to that item.
Is he? What's his name?
Unanimous.
Joe Kazar.
Joe Kazar? Joe Kazar here? Well, do you want to just leave that and go on to new business, and we'll come back to it if Joe Kazar shows up.
Public
Patricia.
hearing B?
Patricia Ave.
I would do
Leave that
public, yeah, public hearing B and then go back to A
Yeah.
is another way to do it.
Yep.
Okay, public hearing A.
B. B.
B, I'm sorry. I'm out of order today.
This will be the conversion of an existing tower site
site.
lease to a perpetual easement for a one-time payment of $900,000 at 90 Patricia Avenue. Map 5, Lot 19. And Joe Bruno is going to speak on this.
We currently have a lease with Crown Castle with about 8 more years on it, and they pay us at a rate of about $3,800 a month, or about $45,000 a year. What we're doing now is to give them a perpetual easement to the property of the cell tower on Patricia Avenue for a one-time fee of $900,000. When you do the time value of money and extend that out into the future at an interest rate of about 2 to 3%, we're making out pretty well on this property, even though so instead of drawing out and continuing with a lease and the negotiation, this is a one-time upfront fee. And I highly recommend this to the rest of the board. I think it can solve a lot of our issues right now.
Do we have a motion?
Well, it's a public hearing.
Yeah. It's a public
So
hearing.
now you need to ask the public for comment.
All right, anyone in the public wish to make a comment on this? Yes?
Take the money.
Who are you?
Should I give him a little more on the procedure? That's okay.
Who was it?
On the procedure? What?
I was just going to,
There's no more public comment.
Yeah, if there's no more public comment, we'll close that portion of the procedure and ask for a motion by the board.
I'll make a motion that the town of Raymond bring forth to the town meeting a finalized contract with Crown Castle and accept payment of $900,000 for a perpetual easement to their property.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comment by board members? Yes, I think Mike got his hand up first.
I'll say right off the top that I am in favor of selling this, what I would call a postage size piece of land for $900,000. I think anybody in this community, if you had that in your own property, it would be a good deal. It is also located at a former dump site, which we really can't do much with as well. So, but I do want to throw out there that by foregoing the lease payments going forward, that does take revenue, yearly revenue, out of our budget. To the tune, I think Joe said, we were close to $40,000. So next year at budget time, we are gonna have to find $40,000 more just to balance the budget. So I just wanna make sure that folks are aware of that, we will have to make up that difference in lease going forward. So, but I am in favor of selling that piece of land because I think over time, we're gonna receive far more money in a one-time payment than we would over the lease payments by the time that tower becomes obsolete. So.
Thank you. Charlie?
And just to add to what Mike said, however, because I think Mr. Bruno and I were the first two proponents of accepting this offer that came from Verizon. It's $900,000. As we go forward with this year's budget, and we go forward with the needs, the capital improvement needs of this town, and what we know to be the commitment we have to make to our roads and to our fire department and our public works capital improvements program, that we will use this $900,000, I would hope, judiciously and wisely in order to actually even out the budgets over the next 4 or 5 years. So what we're doing is we're taking this money and we're committing this town to what we know maybe has been over the past few years, a method of not funding what's needed to be funded in this town, but this will be our opportunity to do that. So I think, though there is a concern about the loss of revenue over the next period of 4 or 5 years, I think you're going to see that we're going to use this money and other revenues in a way that will smooth out our tax commitment and actually be a very responsible use of the budget.
Any further comment? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Good. All right, next, we're going to move on to new business. Consideration of Raymond Beach private management proposals.
You gotta do the minutes.
Oh, that's right. Boy, I'm off the beam today.
Motion to approve the minutes dated February 12th, 2013.
Second.
Any comment? All in favor? Opposed? Minutes are approved.
Mr. Kazar's arrived now.
Oh, so Joe Kazar's. All right, we're gonna go back to public hearing, again open. Item A, extension of amendments to the waste handling agreement with Mid-Maine Waste Action Corporation.
Mr. Kazar is here now.
Yes.
We've been waiting for you. So you've made a big entrance.
Okay, thank you. Raymond is a member of MWEC, member in good standing, one of the original 12 owners that formed MWEC in 1986. The town did that when it entered into an intermunicipal agreement with the other 11 members. And that intermunicipal agreement created MWEC and has a term that expires May 1, 2035. Following that action, each of the 12 members, including Raymond, entered into a waste handling agreement with MWEC. So you had 2 contracts. Each of them is required to be a member in good standing. The waste handling agreement expires at the end of this year. And what we're asking is that that be amended, that basically Article 10 be replaced with a new article that would extend the date to May 1, 2035. In addition, there would be a clause permitting Raymond to withdraw on 1 year's notice. So it's as simple as that. By extending that agreement, both agreements feather together and would keep Raymond in good standing.
Thank you. Any comment? Public? Anyone wish to speak on this subject? If that is the case, then the public comment is, segment is closed. and we'll turn it over to the select board for comment.
I would make a motion that we send this article to the town meeting.
Second.
Motion moved and seconded. Any comment from selectmen? Yes, Charles?
Just as a general comment, this is pretty much just a housekeeping amendment to the contract. We've made amendments before, and so have in other communities that are within the local, interlocal agreements. So there's nothing here that commits the town of Raymond, and I think, Joe, you did a good job by letting us know that within 1 year's notice, should we ever, and it might not make sense, because we're gonna have this bond paid off in another 2 years. So basically, we're gonna be bond-free with MWAC, but we're gonna own a piece of MWAC. So, again, when we think creatively going forward about the needs in this town, we wanna be looking at projects like this that were on the right track. How long was that bond? 20? Was that a 20-year bond? 25-year
It would have been a
bond?
20-year when it was refinanced. MWAC's been in operation that long.
Right, and we're going to have an opportunity as these expire, where we have an asset, basically, and at the same time, we're in a liability, but an asset of a partner of dealing with some of our material, our solid waste. And we have a program, and we've tried to massage that program with single sort and recycling and solid waste. And by being a member of MWAC, going forward, we're gonna save a lot of money, and just in tipping fees alone, by being a member. So, again, this is not just a housekeeping issue, but it's a good financial arrangement that we've had.
Thank you. Any further comment? All in favor? Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
New business, consideration of Raymond Beach private management proposals. You wanna talk about that?
I'm having trouble finding my document. Can you, yes, can you provide me with a name, for instance?
Sure.
Are they here this evening? Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Then we're good to go. Okay, so the presenters are here right in the front row, so I think it would make sense for you to go to the podium and to introduce yourselves and tell us about your proposal for the management of Raymond Beach. This is something that we've tried a few times in the past, unsuccessfully, so I think we're hopeful that the third time is the charm. Unsuccessful in the sense of not sustainable from a business standpoint for various reasons, but the previous parties that have provided services have been very diligent in keeping the beach clean and doing that piece of it. So hopefully we can find a provider that will do that piece, but also make a business go of it. So we're anxious to learn about your business plan, and I do know that you have a similar operation in Oxford at Tractor Supply. Yes. So I guess why don't we go right ahead? Yes.
First of all,
Hold on, please. Sam?
Yes.
In our meeting summary tonight, it was noted that we got two proposals, one that was on time, one that was late.
That's right.
I would ask the board that we not consider the late one unless we find the one that was on time to be not worthy of our consideration. So I would.
Which was the late one?
The late one is,
They're not the late ones?
they're not the
They're
late one.
not, but I just, as a point of,
Okay.
I'm just asking the board that we only hear from the person that was here on time, and if we deem that that proposal is not something we're interested in, then we would go to the one that was late.
That's fine with
Well,
me.
I
Do we
think
need to vote on that?
I think technically, if you have an RFP and someone's late with the
Yeah.
RFP,
They're
it's not a
disqualified.
valid,
They're not,
they're
they're not
automatically
valid yet
disqualified.
anyway.
Okay,
That's
it just, they were both included, and I wanted to just clarify that before we get into any discussion.
But while we're on that issue, another issue, just, and we probably should have done this for Joe Kazar, but permission for non-residents to speak.
Correct.
Ah, there you go.
Just so. I think
Yes.
You would do
Okay.
it.
Can I have a motion that we allow?
Yeah, I make that
You
motion.
could actually just ask for unanimous consent to let non-residents
Okay.
speak. and then it just.
And that will
Well,
cover
that's
that,
all covered
that
right
should
now.
cover
That
the whole
covers it.
meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm asking
Yep,
for unanimous consent.
Yep. Okay.
Good.
Okay, non-residents, speak, please.
Okay.
Thank you for your
very much.
patience.
No problem, gentlemen.
I finally found your paper, your Rocket Monty's Hot Dogs and More.
Hot dogs and more, that's correct.
Okay, I finally got on the
You
right
finally
page
got it
here.
up there, okay.
So sorry for that.
And my name is Ron Demers, and this is Diane Monty. I'm Rocket, she's the Monty part, so. You know, we both live in Otisfield. Diane used to live here in Raymond, up until just a few months ago. And we now own a hot dog cart in Oxford, you know, over at the Tractor Supply. I am going into our business, we hope to operate our hot dog stand, which is a 4x8 building, self-enclosed, that we'd like to put up there and sell hot dogs, hamburgers, sausages, just like we do now. Maintain the beach as much as you guys need to have it done, which we, you know, I love the water and I love the beach, so, you know, it's a great thing. I'm a 3-time All-American swimmer, a lifeguard, you know, swim instructor, everything else. So we hope to bring the hot dog cart there, her expertise in baking and everything else, as well as canoe and kayak rentals, and I hope to be able to do swim instruction. I'm more than qualified to do that, and with your permission, I'd love to do that. You know, so. I mean, we have a full proposal here, but it's like, you know, it's tough talking. It's like, yeah, I'll let you do some. So. Go.
You pretty much covered it. We would be there from morning until evening, somehow cover the shifts. We have a few people that would work for us, and start off in the morning serving coffee and breakfast sandwiches and hot dogs and hamburgers and things like that throughout the day. And as he said, maintain the beach. He's thinking of doing the swimming lessons, and we have kayaks that we've already purchased to rent out. We kind of thought it was a good idea, the other person that had sent the proposal, of maybe doing it jointly. We don't know who he is, but he hadn't mentioned anything about food, and he was talking about parasailing, so we kind of thought that might work out, but either way, we still would like to do it. We sent our proposal in kind of in piecemeal. We did get it in time, but then there was some other information that you needed, and we did send in. We have not given you our references. We have those with us. And any questions, feel free to ask of us.
You were
Yes.
talking about boat rentals, kayaks and
Kayaks
canoes,
and canoes.
Kayaks and canoes.
and they're non-motorized,
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
That's good.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
but parasailing requires a motorboat.
That is the other,
That
the other
was the
person that,
other
you know.
person, and I believe, I read an article that was written in the Lake Region's newspaper, and it said he was thinking of doing parasailing with a jet ski.
But that's
Like I
not,
said, I
that's,
don't know
that's
this
not
person,
us,
I
it's
don't know.
just somebody else.
I just kind
you
of
know.
thought it might be a joint venture, but either way.
I mean, I think we're fine in doing what we do on our own, and, you know, I think with him being there, it would be a win-win in a way, because we would bring customers, just like we do at Tractor Supply. We bring customers to them, they bring customers to us. But, you know, that's a whole other liability thing, and I think we'd be happy just to, you know, do what we do, and sell the hot dogs, sell whatever, and rent kayaks and safety equipment as well as, you know, my teaching swimming, so,
That's good. Joe?
yes, sir.
Thank you for your interest in doing this, by the way.
Yes.
It's kind of what we've been looking for the last 3 years. We have no interest in anything motorized, just so you
Okay.
know.
That's,
But my question to you is this an expansion of your existing business? Are you gonna have 2 sites, or are you gonna focus on Raymond in the summer and Tractor Supply in the winter, or?
That's what we're hoping to do, is just, we don't want to lose our place at Tractor Supply, but we don't have two hot dog stands. So we would
As of
be
yet, yeah.
moving the hot dog stand down to the Raymond Beach and doing that in the summer months, and then moving back to Tractor Supply in the wintertime. That would be ideal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mike?
Going through your proposal, just a point, I'm sure if I don't bring it up, Don will. Can't charge for parking or for beach use down there. We have been given custody of the beach by the state, and that's part of our oversight, is it's a free beach.
I had read that somewhere, that it might be a possibility of the person to do, and we've talked about it since and didn't think it was a good idea to charge it anyway.
Yeah, it's just as I
It's
was
one
going.
of the last free beaches around.
Right. So as I was going through this, the other thing, and I noticed Chris Hansen, our code enforcement officer, is behind you. One of the things you asked about was a 4x4 storage, and that would house your generator and supplies. I know the first year we were looking at this, I think we talked about the fact that stuff wouldn't be left there overnight. I don't know if that has changed, but Chris, can you give us a little bit of outline of what's allowed and what's not, maybe?
Yeah, you're correct. What is allowed would be a portable building or a portable hot dog cart. What wouldn't be allowed is a structure. So the long and short of it is, you said you had a 4x8 fully enclosed cart?
Yes.
It would
If
ju-
that's
haul behind
portable,
a truck.
then
yeah.
you'd take that off-site, that would be allowed.
So we'd have to move it every night?
Correct.
Right.
If not, the reason, you might find that you could find a place, the problem is a 100-foot setback from the water. I think any place on that site, the only place that would, you could have a permanent or a temporary structure may be in the parking lot itself, not near
Which
the
would be
beach. So there's a couple things I wanted to mention. One, you'd have to get a peddler's license from the town if they go forward. Having a generator in an enclosure, you could have that, but take that at night as well. But we could work out those details at another time, and I could work with you as to see if there is a spot where you could actually leave it. We had, in the past, the Black Ghost Cafe, they wanted to build have a structure on land, and we couldn't find a spot for it. It was gonna take up too many parking spaces.
Sure.
So if it's a small structure and we can find a spot that meets the setbacks from the road and the water, we could allow it to be a temporary structure.
Okay.
So you could work with me on that.
Sure.
If not, it would have to go back and forth at night.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would rather not have to move it back and forth because of the wear and tear on the vehicle, but, but it is a 4x8, and we could stick it in one, far corner of the parking lot.
It's got wheels on it, it's mobile, we might be able to work something out.
It has wheels.
And that has wheels on it, so we could, I'm sure we could work something out.
Chris, just from my understanding, if the trailer, which is on wheels during the day, is parked on tar, that takes up a space, right? 4x8 basically takes up a
Yep.
space. Part of our agreement would be that we're giving them permission to put the hot dog cart down there, so therefore you're taking up a space every day. If it falls, right, I now see where you're going, right? I mean, you're moving it or you're not, it's temporary structure, it's taking up a space. It's different than having two structures.
In the past, the structures didn't have wheels, they didn't have a
Right.
trailer, it wasn't licensed. If it's a licensed trailer, we can probably work this out.
Thank you very much.
Because we'd be more than happy to park it on the lawn, or, somewhere.
No, I think the parking lot would be a good spot for
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Right, thank you, Charlie.
And Chris, wouldn't that be the same then, or we could work some details out on the canoe and kayak storage? Because I'm assuming you're
Well,
not
they
planning to haul.
haven't made a
hauling those-
proposal, if they wanted to do a dock, which I don't know if I can permit a dock with
Can
your approval, which I haven't had any discussion
No.
with you whether you want one or not, or they could pull the boats up onto the beach and store them on the beach. or on the grassed area where where the little trees are and on the left-hand side, they may be able to store them there. Boats aren't structures.
Oh,
Yeah, and the kayaks and the canoes could, we could bring those home with us if we needed to.
You might want to
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
vandalism
for-
reasons.
yeah, Sure, for safety reasons and everything else.
Those were my main concern was we didn't get stuck with a structure in the shoreline zone and then the state come down on us, the E DEP.
Charlie?
I too want to give my unending gratitude for you coming forward. I think we have been at this now for 3 years, and not only this board, but I think I'm speaking for former Selectman Timmy Pomerlo, who may have gotten brought into the discussion recently. So our gratitude for this, and I would make a motion to direct the town manager and town staff to continue working with with this proposal to move forward and come back to us then, once you've had an opportunity. I guess one other question I had is,
Yes.
do you see it as, because this did happen to the last vendor, is there going to be a problem though if you, on your revenue stream and your long-term business plan, if you leave Tractor Supply for 3 to 4 months?
No, we have an agreement with them that we pay the 4-H so much money a month, and we can move it down here. We do it as a donation, basically, and we hope to move it down here for those 3 months from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and maintain the beach, and keep a nice family environment and be able to sell our food, and like I said, hopefully I can teach, swim lessons, and we can rent kayaks and canoes as well, so.
Then I make the motion to move forward.
I
Motion made,
will-
second?
I will second the motion with the caveat that we have waived the peddler license fee for the last 2 vendors, and I hope we would do the same here, and at least give them a good beginning to start with.
Yeah. So we're
I
including
appreciate
in the
that as well.
motion.
I would take that as a absolutely friendly amendment. to
No,
all.
I appreciate that very much, so.
Well, I have a few questions,
Any comments from anyone?
please. Were you able to work out the questions that you had pertaining to responsibility, insurances, how much authority that you have to be able to keep this beach as a safe place?
I believe we have, I think Diane's been in contact, with Danielle and answered most of those questions. I mean, it's a liability thing too as well. We're insured for $1 million in liability for for the hot dog cart, if anybody gets hurt or anything else happens. But, there was that question as to what our responsibility was with somebody being out on the beach and, getting hurt or.
In order to clarify, in case it hasn't been already, we're not seeking a beach police, but
No, true.
if you do observe something that is reportable, we would hope that you would
Oh.
contact
Oh,
the
yeah.
Cumberland County Sheriffs
I mean-
directly if you feel comfortable doing that, or staff, and we can do that. And, but we're not asking you to be, policing, but if you see something minor, I mean,
Oh, sure.
litter, that sort of thing. In the past, the operators have advised people of the rules and minor things, but that's to your comfort level. It's fine also to advise staff, and we'll take care of it.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, I've been a 3-time All-American swimmer. I've been a lifeguard and a swimmer, since I was a little kid. And so I like a clean beach. I like a safe beach, and that's what we want to have, so. And I think that's what the town of Raymond needs as well, so. That's
How
what
much
we're looking
trash
for.
do you think that you'd pull together each day? How much trash?
Not exactly sure.
Do we have, you mean?
Correct.
Our
On
trash
a
is.
busy
our-
day.
Minimum.
Our trash is minimal.
Yeah.
It's the trash that may
We have
show
a
up on the beach.
32-gallon trash can, and I think we only have to empty it once a week.
Once a week?
Yeah.
In terms of our trash, Nathan, our Public Works Director, knows. He can tell you how much trash and how that works.
Yeah.
And he'll pick it up, I believe you picked it up roadside for the previous operators, so you
Right.
just bag it
Oh,
and leave
okay.
it for him in the
Great.
morning, and he'll take care of it from there. But he can give you a good idea of what you might have for volume, and and et cetera.
Okay, good. That works out nice. I was
No, I'm
thinking
good.
about hauling it back home.
Somebody in the audience has a question.
Point of order, is there going to be public discussion on this at all, on this matter?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right now.
The question
Yeah, we
I
can do
have
it,
is simply.
yeah. Please stand up to the, identify yourself.
Elliot Stanley, I have a place in Casco. I'm wondering if there
In
is
Casco?
a clear separation in terms of the liability between the town of Raymond and whatever insurance they may have. $1 million umbrella policies, such as many of us have who live on the lake or have places on the lake, doesn't go very far if there should be a boating accident. That could be a question that, in which the insurance liability would then pass over to the town of Raymond. I just wonder whether that has been fully considered. Otherwise, I have no objection to the plan, certainly.
Yes, that has been fully considered. We obviously have vetted this, the insurance coverage and so forth, the contract via our town attorney. I believe actually the coverage that they have exceeds what we're requesting, and so, but duplicative coverage, the town's protection is of the utmost importance and one of our top priorities. So that's all covered in the detailed agreement between the parties, which can, if it's not posted, can be posted and made available, is available from the town office.
Any other questions, comments? Moved, seconded. Any further comments by the board? All in favor?
Gentlemen,
Unanimous.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Danielle, thank you for all your help. Okay.
Do you want us to leave those,
Letters of recommendation with you?
Yes.
Yes, leave with Danielle.
Okay.
If you have any hot dogs, we take those.
Oh, my God. I've seen too many hot dogs. Steak sandwiches and stuff.
I heard
So
donuts.
you're what, three-time All-American swimmer.
Great, wonderful.
I think it's called dollars
I
to
swam all
donuts,
the way through high school and college.
or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Great.
And actually, I ended up coaching in Bates and had a little more All-Americans training.
Great, congratulations.
Hope to be able to teach some of the kids from Orlando.
Yes, I think that would be a great asset for us.
They used to be swimming lessons down there.
A long time ago.
I took them. I actually became a junior lifeguard down
That's what my kids
6
used to
o'clock in
do.
the morning.
I did, and I did them in notice field, I taught them in notice field, because nobody knew how to get butterfly. So I did butterfly.
There you go.
All right. Just leave with Danielle. She's handling this coordination of the materials for the involved staff, so you'll probably mostly meet with Chris, but Danielle will pull all that info together. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Very good. All right, the next issue is consideration of funding for Tenny River project, and John Rand, who was to speak on this, please, could we have your attention here? Thank you. John Rand, who was to speak on this, is unavailable this evening, so we'll move on to the next one, which is
I'll make a motion to table.
Table out.
table.
that.
Oh, yes.
Second.
All in favor? Motion is tabled till April, yes, he wants it on April. Louise, are you here? Okay, setting a meeting for the annual town meeting. Oops.
Might open by saying, I hope we get this many people at town meeting. Basically, tonight, all I am looking for is for an agreement from you that the tentative dates for town meeting and the elections, town meeting being June 4th, which is a Tuesday, 7 p.m., and the elections on June 11th, the following Tuesday, which would be our regular 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Do we need to vote on that?
I'll make a motion to accept that recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Or any, I'm sorry, any comments? Charlie?
No.
All in favor? All right, that's what it is. Thanks, Louise. The next item on the agenda is an executive session, but I'm wondering if we should take the consideration of the amended heavy oil sands resolution first. How many here are here for the oil sands resolution? That's what I thought. So I think we better take that, and so you don't have to sit through or wait for us in executive session. We have the amended oil sands resolution, proposed resolution in front of us. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? The resolution has been amended with the great help of Selectman Reynolds to make it more balanced so that we're not have the appearance of demonizing the oil people who have been in our community in our state for many years, since 1950, I believe. So, has everyone had a chance to look at that new amendment? Well, does anybody have a copy? Can you show the gentleman?
There should be some at the podium.
Yeah, there's more at the podium.
Mr. Chair, I'd ask that we take public comment before we have a discussion.
Very good.
On the
Yeah,
resolution.
good idea. So we're gonna take public comment before the board has a discussion of it. And with the number of people here, I'm gonna limit the public comment, each speaker, to 2 minutes. And you should be able to make your point there. And if a point has been made, there's no point in repeating it. In other words, if someone makes the point, there's no need for you to go up and make that point again. All right, now, comments from the public. Yes, sir. Please give your name and your residence.
My name is David Sear. I'm Portland Pipeline's Chief Financial Officer, and I reside in Cape Elizabeth. First, I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen for the deliberative process you've gone through to come up with a final decision, either this evening or what we prefer is basically a rejection of this resolution, or at the very minimal part, a postponing or tabling this decision, simply because there's been new information that was published last week by the U.S. State Department, that's President Obama's U.S. State Department, on the draft environmental impact statement on the Keystone Project that basically spoke to a number of issues that have been presented by the environmental community in this forum that was held in February 12th, as well as other forums. And the bottom line is that the environmental claims have been exaggerated, and we feel that it would be important to consider the findings in that State Department report before any decision is finally reached by the community, to ensure that the facts are clarified, well understood, and then decisions are made based on having the availability of a report that was basically produced by the federal government in concert with the EPA, U.S. Coast Guard, and other agencies. We'd be happy to entertain any questions that you may have later. And finally, I'd like to point out that we are going through this 2,000-page document and plan to have a report summing our findings of that extensive document in the short term, and we'd be happy to share the results with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Emily Figdor. I'm the Director of Environment Maine, which has 200 members in Raymond. I also want to thank you for your deliberative process. I know that many of you have been studying this issue and talking with others about it, and I really do appreciate that. I want to encourage you not to delay. The the fact is that this project is moving forward very quickly in Canada, and we don't have time to sit on the sidelines here in Raymond, where the community could face such serious consequences if this project moves forward. We are not in the middle of the country where the Keystone XL project is. We're here in Maine, and we know firsthand what happens when this product, tar sands oil, spills into waterways. We've seen it firsthand in the Kalamazoo River in Michigan, where 1 million gallons of tar sands spilled into a wetland that migrated into about 35 miles of the Kalamazoo River and has permanently polluted that river after $800 million of cleanup in more than 2 years. The EPA and Enbridge, the company responsible, are still working to clean up the river, and there's no solution. So we have enough information. The new document out from the government certainly addresses and acknowledges the risks. And the risks are just too big for us. There's no benefits at all to Raymond in this project, none at all. There's no benefits to Maine. So let's think about what is so important to us here, and that's our waterways. For recreation, for our economy, there's no reason to put that at risk. And so I encourage you to move forward and pass this revised resolution. I thank Selectman Reynolds and everyone else who's worked on it. And I wanted to also present to you 109 comments that are signed by residents in Raymond, encouraging you to do everything in your power to stop the project from moving forward. Perhaps I'll give these to Danielle. And I also brought copies of some different materials, including just a map that was put together by the Portland Water District that looks at the pipeline route in the Sebago Lake watershed and through Raymond. And if you haven't seen this, please do look at it when you have a chance. You'll see that the pipeline nearly touches Sebago Lake, crosses Panther Run, crosses right through the entire Sebago Lake watershed. You could never cite a pipeline where it is cited today, but this pipeline is very old, which adds to its risks. So thank you so much, and sorry for taking additional time, but I'll leave copies of this for each of you.
Thank you, Emily.
Good evening. My name is Howard Reben. I'm a resident of Maine. I really didn't expect to speak on this particular item, but those who know me probably...
Where in Maine?
Raymond.
Oh, Raymond, okay.
Know me that I can't usually resist saying something if I think it's at all relevant. I'm amazed by this whole resolution. How could we do any less than call upon state and federal officials to conduct an environmental and safety review? How could we do anything less and be stewards of Sebago Lake, which is where this pipeline runs right by? This isn't a big deal. This is a very small beginning, and we can hardly say no to the concept that we ought to look at it very carefully. In the very examples above, it talks about how our waterways and how our woodlands are so very important. Could we say, oh, don't bother. Don't bother doing a review. It's okay if you pollute Sebago Lake. It's okay. We couldn't say that. And that's all we're saying here. Take a good look. It's important to us. That's what all these people, or a lot of them, are here to tell you. Make the government take a good look before they pollute the very thing that makes Maine Maine. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Peter?
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. I guess what I just say is take a little risk of dovetailing onto the last speaker, so I don't want to be repetitive. But in reading the document, I think the discussion at the last meeting was the fact that a phrase that is near and dear to my heart, that seemed to be a certain amount of inflammatory political rhetoric in there, and I don't see that in there now. I do see both sides of this issue, and I do understand that the pipeline's been a good neighbor for 50 years, that there haven't been any major incidents. It is what it is. My understanding is if aspirin was discovered today, it'd be a prescription drug. But when it was discovered, there was no FDA. So the bottom line is you can buy it over the counter. So the pipeline is what it is. It's where it is. I believe everything in that document is basically positive. And is just reinforcing the appropriate steps, as the last gentleman just said. And I guess lastly, what I'd say is that it's a situation where I think that the select board and the town of Raymond ought to try and be careful about getting involved in political arguments like this. And to paraphrase one individual I spoke to, we had a young lady up here asking that we declare a week for diaphragmatic hernias in children. And I didn't see that there was a whole lot of research that went in to see that that was a viable organization. I believe it is. I didn't research it, but I believe it is. But I didn't see the selectmen have any problem in approving that because it was all positive. So I don't see anything in this document that's negative. And I encourage you to approve it.
Thank you, Peter.
My name is John Quinn. I'm with the New England Petroleum Council out of Boston, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak to this issue as I did last month. There were a number of pieces that were in the original resolution, all of which were addressed in my view in the short time that I've had to look at the State Department's environmental impact statement, and I haven't done a thorough research of that. But if you go down, as I hope you will, and I hope you will take the time to do it and not do anything with this tonight. If you go down through the EAIS, you will see that the statements that were made here initially were false. They were misleading. They attempt to make oil sands look and appear to the citizens of Raymond and a number of other towns as potentially this roaring, molten river of corrosive liquid sandpaper rolling through the pipelines was false. And the Obama administration has spent several years. The delay of the XL pipeline is now 4 years out, principally on the basis of the claims that were made that they've responded to. The resolution you have before you now strips those out. The bottom line, however, is that if you go forward with the resolution, you will see that Environment Maine and Natural Resources Council of Maine will trumpet this as another town that slammed the pipeline and slammed oil sands. That's the way it will be interpreted. This started out as a political statement, and it will end up as a political statement. I've been at other meetings in other towns where the supporters have said, we wish to send a message to President Obama, and that's why it's important that you do this now. Well, there's not even a project here for this, for the pipeline company. The town of Raymond is being used, the pipeline is being used, and I would ask you to review that and review it carefully and perhaps take the time to look at the EIS and consider further before you act. Thank you.
May I make a quick response to that statement? The fact is, we've gone out of our way to avoid what you're saying is that it's going to be used as a political thing. I don't think it can be. If you read it closely, it cannot be. We're asking for simple environmental research, study on this, and that is it. Okay, thank you. Next. Yes, sir.
I'm only a temporary resident here. I'm trained in engineering and physics and formerly an employee researcher at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution.
Excuse me, sir, what is your name? And your,
I apologize, Gregory Rupert.
and where are you from?
And I'm living on Lake Sebago, Forest Road. And I've been a resident here for about 3 years.
Thank you.
But I'm a temporary resident because I plan on leaving. But but as an engineer and a scientist, if I had been in on this project for the oil company, one thing that I would have done, and maybe this has already been addressed, is that I would have liked to have examined the condition of the oil pipe that has been in use for, what, 50 or 60 years. And I would like to have done a acoustical scan of it to see if that's possible. I think it is, what its integrity is. Just like an MRI. I would like to MRI of the oil pipe at random places before making the decision to reuse it, this old pipe, as a conduit for this new product. So I just would like to ask if this has been done, and when, and what the results were.
Thank you. I don't know the answer to that, but that's what we're asking as well.
Okay. This is not just environmental. This is an actual, you know, it might even involve digging up portions of earth over the pipe and, you know, really looking at it. You know, what does it look like? What condition is it in?
Well, we're asking for
Common
for a
sense.
complete survey
You know.
of it, and,
If I was on the staff, that's what I would have demanded.
all right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes.
Eileen Stiles, 30-year resident on Deep Cove. And as the board knows, I'm very active as a volunteer in town. My biggest concern is what this gentleman just said in the 60-year-old pipeline, and whether this type of oil has ever been used in such an ancient piece of pipe at this point. If the steel that was used was defective in the pipeline coming down from Canada already, and they already had spills due to that, you know, what's the integrity of that 60-year-old pipeline? The other issue in my mind, engineering-wise, and maybe this gentleman can help, is the viscosity of this oil that's going to be coming through. And is it really liquid, or is it more of a sludge? That's my only question.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes?
I've been drinking, really.
Yeah, my first hope is that there certainly isn't any sinkhole under this floor, but we don't need that. I'm Charlie Turner. I live on Panther Pond. I'm a resident, been there a resident for, I believe, 52 years, which does not make me a native, but I try. First of all, I'd like to just mention that there is absolutely, in my mind, I cannot find any benefit either to the town or to the citizens of the town with this project. That's my first thought of this, coming on this particular issue. There is obviously some risks involved, and I've always thought of the old, excuse me, I've always thought of the old axiom, it is better to err on the side of caution. I know that if any of us were living anywhere near to the proximity of that pipeline, we would probably have pretty strong views to it, as I do. There are, I believe there's 4 towns now that have adopted a resolution, 2 of them being Casco and Waterford last Saturday, I guess it was, and so on. And in closing, I think this is I hope we can avoid this potential, well, could be a disaster. And in closing, I would just like to say is what is it that we use when we want to grind something down? And the answer is, of course, sandpaper. And I think that between sandpaper and tar sands, I think the connection is pretty clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see
That's
it.
okay. We were in each other's way, so. My name's Carrie Sullivan. I've been living on Deep Cove Road since 1985. And this resolution is a step in the right direction, but I don't think it's enough. I really think we need to say that, no, we do not want to participate in having the oil sands come through the town of Raymond. It's a 50-year-old, or 60, I thought it was 50, but pipe. This is everything I've read on it makes it sound like it's, like somebody already said, like sandpaper. I wouldn't trust it. And our water is drinking water. It's recreational water. It brings us tax money for all the people that live on the water, and I don't think we should jeopardize that at all.
Thank you.
Step right up. Just go get in line. There's lots of people to talk. Go
May
get in line.
May I please ask you to withhold your applause the next time? We're trying to make this balanced and even. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Connie Cross. I'm a resident of Casco, but I own property on Panther Pond, so I actually owe more taxes to the town of Raymond than I do to Casco. Within the last 2 years, the Luneco Land Trust and the Trust for Public Land conducted an extensive survey in our 6-town area, which included Raymond, Casco, Naples, Harrison, Bridgeton, Denmark, Sebago. That might be 7 towns, I'm not sure. And the question that we put forth to many, many residents of these towns was, what do you most value about living in the Lakes region? What do you want to see protected? And some of the things that came up were things like, I want to live in a small town. I want to live where wildlife is protected. I want to live where there are beautiful scenic vistas. All of those things came up, but the number one value that came up again and again was water quality. I want to protect water quality. So I think we need to listen to the citizens, not only of Raymond, but of this whole region, that water quality is the number one reason why we live here and why we want to see what we want to see protected. Thank you.
Thank you. You must not have said anything right because you didn't get any applause.
My name is Elaine Keith, and I live on Quarry Cove Road, and we have been here since 1999. I just want to bring up a couple of points about this pipe that's in the ground. I sold culvert pipe for many years, and our soils are very acidic here in the state of Maine, and I don't know what this pipeline, whether it's metal or whether it's concrete or what it is, but I know that our acidic soils do eat away at the metal pipes that I used to sell. And also, we've heard a lot about this tar sands and that it's very corrosive and that it's gooey or whatever you want to call it. But has anybody asked for a chemical analysis of what this actually is and what it is you're going to be putting in this pipe? Those are my questions.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Murray. I live on the Shore Road in Raymond for a while. I also am about 3 years older than the pipe that you intend to send this stuff through, and I would highly recommend not to put anything through that pipe based on based on what I know about my pipes. I wouldn't sign up for that course if I were you. Okay. I came here trying to, I heard some, different people tell me, hey, you got to go to this meeting, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have the NIMBYs, which I think I am, because I'm seeing the line is drawing that thing. It's pretty much, I'm live on the side of Thomas Pond. It's like, I guess I can walk to the pipeline through the woods from there, okay? So it's in my backyard, and I have a well. And I have an interest in the environment here. I love this place. But I try to come here thinking like, okay, I'm either going to be a wacko environmentalist, a right-wing conservative, drill, kill the polar bear guy. I don't know. I thought I'd just come here and just listen to people. But the more I sat here, I've been looking at this this fish, behind you, and I think I'm going to speak for the fish. And I think we should not go there. If we are going to let the white man put this thing through our reservation, then I suggest we charge a very large preventive impact fee, like a toll, okay, that we could use maybe to put some tar out in the backyard in this mud hole that I just got my car stuck in out back, okay? And the water quality ain't too good back there, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Mike D'Arcangelo. I live on Daggett Drive, and I also want to thank the board. I know it sounds like you've reflected on this in terms of many different angles. My perspective is that the state of Maine is known nationally, internationally as a mecca for tourism. It's a pristine state. I just can't see how the risk makes any sense at all. And I think it just lends itself to our addiction on oil. I mean, if we allow this and other things like this that are a more dangerous type of oil, where's it getting us long term? I just don't see how the risk makes any sense. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim?
Jim Stevenson, 38 Clearwater Drive. I think the comments that we've heard tonight are speaking pretty much for what I have to say as well, but I'll just go ahead and reiterate some of that just so I can state my position. But I think it's common sense, even or irrespective of what the oil company professionals will say, and obviously it's their job to say what they have to say. It's only common sense, I believe, to realize that there is some risk that this pipeline presents. However, the studies come back. It's hard to deny that there's going to be some risk. It's just so old. It's a reverse flow. It's a different substance. When I was on the comp plan, Brad McCurtain, who was the co-chair, stated so well, and he brought the point home, that we have a very good industry here in Raymond, and as diligently as the select board works, and you do, to keep our tax base down and to provide the services that we need. We don't want to jeopardize that industry, and that industry is our lakefront property. It drives a lot of income. If something were to ever happen that would affect the lake like the tar sands could, it would greatly diminish, I believe, perhaps the income to the town, just to look at it from an economic standpoint. So unless there's something great to be gained from this for the town, for the residents of Raymond, I would ask that you listen to the residents of Raymond when you're making this decision, and make your decision based on what the residents of Raymond are asking you to do.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else? Yes.
He's already spoken.
You've already spoken, sir.
Good evening, Chris Gillis, Portland Pipeline in South Portland, Maine. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank you, appreciate the opportunity at the last select in meeting to let our company CEO speak. I think that was a great forum. Also, appreciate the thoughtful deliberation that you put into the revised resolution that didn't go unnoticed. When we got a copy of that, we were quite pleased to see that all of the inflammatory remarks and things that have been in many of the other town resolutions had been removed. I know I've heard a lot of folks concerned about the age and the integrity of the asset. I will say that you know, we maintain that asset well. We have to the corrosion issue, we have what we call cathodic protection that protects the pipeline from corroding, like the woman was talking about. And we also do the internal inspection someone was talking about. I like to inspect the pipeline. We do internal inspections. We've been doing those on those lines since the 1980s, actually ahead of when, you know, the regulations called for that. So we've been doing that for quite some time. And as our president talked about in the last meeting, we are, you know, been recognized by the Coast Guard and others as one of the premier pipeline operators in the country. So I hope you get an opportunity to go to, say, our website and things and see those awards. I will note that despite the claims, I think a lot of folks are, if you go to the website, the DOT, we've asked the town to put up a link to the DOT report that has, it shows, you know, conventional oils and the properties of the oil sands, and you'll see that there really isn't any difference between the two. And we've been pumping light, medium, and heavy oil since 1941 when we went in business. So appreciate the opportunity, and I guess in closing, you know, we just recommend that you vote against the resolution, and I think, you know, the questions and issues can be addressed in other ways, and we'd be happy to meet with you on that. So thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
You've already spoken, sir.
Am I speaking yet?
No.
There was a woman there that wanted to say something.
My name is Ann Thomas, and I own property on Forest Road, and I also own property on Casco Bay on Willard Street in South Portland. This issue, you know, I've been following it, have gone to all the meetings, listened to both sides. I'm not political, I'm not really environmental, I'm just a resident in this area. I love this lake. It's very important to me. It's very important to everybody here. There's three things in life that we need: food, air, and water. And this is our water. And I don't think that we can take the chance, that even there's a remote chance, that there's going to be a problem. I have no problem with the Canadians bringing tar sands into this area, none at all. I just don't want it near Sebago Lake, because that's where I live. That's where we all live. And it's very important that we protect this. You know, we can't have this kind of thing, even the slightest risk that this is going to cause a problem. And it always sounds, you know, people say, well, you know, we've had all this great, you know, that we have all these awards and we've done all this stuff, and that's wonderful until something happens. And then when that happens, can you put your money where your mouth is? I mean, can you fix this problem? And I don't think you can. There's a lot of chemicals that go into making this tar sands more liquid, so it's able to go through these pipelines. This pipeline is really old, you know, and I don't want to take the chance. I'm not a gambler. I don't go to Vegas. I stay here in Maine. I put all my assets, everything I own is in these two properties, you know, and I love this lake. I don't want anything to happen to it. I don't use pesticides. I do everything that I can to make sure that my lake, because it's my lake, is pristine, and it stays that way. All my friends, all the businesses that I associate with, that I do business with, they all rely on this lake for their livelihood. We can't take that chance. And, you know, and I understand that this is about business, but this really is about my life. It's about our life, you know, and I think that if you want to bring tar sands into this area, there has to be another way to do it, not with an old pipeline. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Dennis?
Dennis Morse, Anderson Road. Without hearing one person from Raymond speak as a proponent of the pipeline and, or against this resolution, I ask you to represent us and vote it through.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Oh, spoke against it.
Can I address you individuals just briefly?
I don't see how you can do that, sir. You've already spoken, and you've made your point very well, as a
Only
matter
had
of
one
fact.
shot.
That's all we all get, one shot. Yes, sir.
He said he's.
Oh, you've spoken too,
No,
sir.
no,
You spoke on another issue. Oh, on another issue. Well, it doesn't matter, you spoke on something, and that's it.
That was last month. I want to commend, this Elliot Stanley, I have a place on Sebago Haven Road in Casco. I want to commend the board, the 3 members who put together the resolution, I believe is up for discussion tonight. It seems to me that you have brought the town of Raymond essentially into alignment with the position of our congressional delegation, of which 17 members signed a letter a week or so back. And now two additional members, Senators King and Collins, have signed on to this. So we have a unanimous statement of our congressional delegation to the effect that they want to see environmental studies before tar sands comes into the, not just the state of Maine, but into the northeastern part of the country. I think that's an important development. The other thing is that the Waterford resolution, which was passed a couple of days ago, stated, through the adoption of this resolution, the town of Waterford expresses its opposition to the transport of tar sands oils through our town via the existing public utility easement. We feel that such transport is of no benefit to Waterford and entails unacceptable risk to our river, our public health and safety, property values, recreation resources, water quality, and the pristine natural resources upon which our community depends. So with that, I just want to say thanks again for the work you're doing on this, and that'll be it for me.
Thank you.
Now, could I mention,
No,
since
sir.
he did already, it's a precedent.
No, well, no, he spoke on a totally different issue.
Okay.
It was not this. I'm sorry, sir, we're trying to move this along, and your presentation was very, very good. Anyone else? All right, then the public comment is closed. Is there a motion from the board?
Here's my dilemma. The Keystone Pipeline environmental impact study came out last week. I started reading it. It's 2,000 pages. Yeah. But some of the stuff they said in there is these oil sands are not much different than regular crude that's going through the pipeline already. And so if we're saying that we don't want oil sands to go through the pipeline, yet the federal government and the State Department are saying there's no difference, do we say we want to stop all oil from going through the pipeline?
We're not saying that.
Well, I understand that. But as the gentleman stated earlier, what's going to happen is going to say Raymond just jumped on this bandwagon with these resolutions, and therefore, here's another town under our, that we can notch on our belt.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, I'm just offering my opinion on this, Sam. You could disagree. It's hard to vote against a clean environment. It's hard to say, we don't want an oil spill in Raymond. Well, I mean, we all feel that. Nobody wants an oil spill. But yet, we have crude oil going through the pipeline. The federal government is saying oil sands are the same thing as crude oil. There's not a whole lot of difference. And so, I don't know how you balance that.
Let me just ask you this,
Yep.
Joe. I agree with you in many ways on this. However, what we're asking for is an inspection, a thorough inspection of this, and what's wrong with that?
But my problem, Sam, is I don't know what the process is. I don't know what the permitting process is for this. How do you, what's the process to reverse the flow? What's the process to bring this oil through the pipeline? What is the permitting process? I don't know, so.
I don't either.
Mr. Chairman, in order to have a proper discussion on this issue, I will move a resolution to protect the health and safety of local citizens, water bodies, and other natural resources in relation to the potential transport of oil sands through Raymond.
Second.
Discussion? No further discussion?
Well, I'm gonna be opposed, not because I want, however you wanna phrase oil sands, tar sands, however you wanna call it. I don't know enough about it. You have a project in the Midwest that's doing the same thing. The State Department, the federal government has looked at it and said, we don't think there's much of an environmental impact.
You said that.
I said that, exactly. So why are we gonna pass a resolution saying we want all these studies done when we don't know what the process is? I would like to hear from the pipeline people. If you go forward with this, what is the permitting process? What studies need to be done to do this, if any at all?
Any further comment? Mike?
First of all, for all of you folks in the audience who contacted me about this, I appreciate it. For those of you at home who aren't here who contacted me, I appreciate it. On the flip side of this, the organization that sent out over 50 emails to me through a feeder system
to all of us,
claiming that you were speaking for somebody else, I do not appreciate that, okay? Had I not heard from individuals personally after that, what I consider attack by a single organization, I would not support this at all, because that was one person speaking for many and sending spam. So I'll throw that out to everybody. At the same time, I would ask anybody who wants to contact me, phone, email, whatever, please do on any issue. Individuals make the difference here, okay? The resolution that was presented to me a month ago, I could not support, okay? I think we've heard some of that here tonight. I took a shot at something that I thought was a little fair, and I'm still not sure whether I'm going to support that tonight. I do support our water, but I don't support no benefit to Raymond, right? We're citizens of the country, of the world, all right? We can't say not in my backyard. You just can't. We would never get anything done, okay? So I have a hard time with not in my backyard. I went over the notes and watched the meeting from a month ago so that I could be ready for this evening. And I heard about state, federal, and presidential permitting that needs to happen before this would go through our pipeline. I don't know the answers that other folks have brought up tonight about what exact permitting it is, but I understand the concern of citizens and how many of you did it. Do I think this will be used as a political tool with a title like we have? Yes, absolutely. No matter what words are underneath it for our resolution, it'll be the title of our resolution that will be used politically. That's what I'm considering voting on. All right, I would prefer at this point in time, due to information, to take more time with this. I don't think we need to be the fifth town to sign off on this. I am in support of environmental studies. I am in support of safety review for this, but I'd like to know what it is. And I think that Raymond needs to be partners to the global community, and we need to protect ourselves as well. And I don't have enough information on this right now, I think, to vote either way. So I would prefer that we get more information and learn more as time goes on.
Moved and seconded. More? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I understand everyone's concern. I'm born and raised in this town, and I feel that I do not have enough information neither to vote on this and do it with every aspect of the town. And I can see myself steering more towards, you know, a yes with this resolution. But part of me is saying that I do not have a lot of the answers that I'm asking. And my biggest issue is 60-year-old pipe. It really is. I mean, we bring in somewhere around, you know, $35,000 a year in taxes for having that pipeline through our town, and it would take centuries to bring back anything that if we had a spill. It just that would be priceless. It would be terrible. Turn a $1 billion town into a very minimal, and I honestly wish that the motion was never made and that we not at that point. Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
And it was seconded. And I'm going to make a comment too.
We're
and
minutes from voting on it, and
I completely do not understand the turnaround that has taken place up here. I do not understand that, and I disagree with it in a very hard way. Let me finish. What we are asking for here is an inspection of any line that's going to carry whatever, maybe it's carrying the same thing through with the oil sands as it's carrying through now, but what is wrong with the thorough environmental inspection of a 50 or 60-year-old pipeline? What is wrong with that? And I don't understand the question. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's an emotional topic, and you don't want to go off. We don't want to go off of the process because everybody knows it's what keeps things democratic. One of the problems I've seen right from the beginning in having this presented to us way before it came to Raymond. I mean, it was in Bethel, it was in Waterford, it was in the news. It's been a global issue, so to speak. It's been an international issue. That's what's driven this latest study that came out of the Secretary of State's office, because it's included environmental impact statements, but it was done at the direction of the State Department because the issue crosses international borders. And the issue that I've seen mostly that has separated us is that Portland Pipeline, Montreal Pipeline, and all oil companies, for that matter, and natural gas, measure in 42-gallon barrels multiplied by millions of barrels. And when you measure risk, to define risk of water quality, you measure that in parts per billion, in parts per trillion. So when people sit and feel they're on one side of the issue and they're having trouble, sometimes it's the language that's being used. So keep that in mind. Profits, millions of barrels. Risk, and not saying this particular risk. Could be oil. It could be the naphtha diluent that's used to thin it out and thin the viscosity more so than normal. Parts per trillion. And that's when you're looking at the risk of, and I think I heard an echo, that yes, we're an oil-based world still, but we're also now becoming more and more aware of our water-based economies, whether it's Poland Spring or Casco Bay or Sebago Lake. So we're a different community than we were 60 years ago. We've matured, as has the technologies, have matured. And what I see in this resolution is basically asking the federal and state government just to do its job. Just protect us. And you're asking it from the local level. You're asking us as your representatives. And I must admit, despite the overwhelming e-cards that we might have received, 2 meetings in a row now, I've sat here and seen 35 or 40 people from the town of Raymond come here and say, we should have a resolution. And when we, as a body, decided at our last meeting, well, we're going to stay away from that inflammatory political language. All parties came together. Portland Pipeline, except for one little issue now, based on President Wilson's letter to us today, has only really one issue, and that was with the word conduct an environmental and safety review rather than, I would suggest, continue the already ongoing safety reviews regardless of what's in that pipe. It could be marshmallow for all I'm concerned, but if 1 part per trillion of marshmallow is going to affect Panther Pond or Sebago Lake or Crooked River or the Kalamazoo, then we ought to make sure that our state and federal, and in this case, I'm hoping our good friends in Canada, they're doing their job also. And we're just asking them to do their job. I don't see anything that would rise this resolution to the level of political rhetoric or table this for the future. There's plenty of time for the science, and there'll be more, believe me. And by the time this goes through, and there is really a potential for oil sands to go through this pipe, because it's not going through the pipe yet. So we don't have any risk more than we have right now. And all this resolution is asking is for our other government entities to do their job. And I don't see any reason why we should oppose it.
Thank you.
This
Did you
motion,
have anything new to say, Mike?
Absolutely.
Newer than that, gentlemen.
No, that's why I said that. I don't want to,
I do think Charlie brings up a very good point in the difference of conduct versus continue. And from my standpoint, I would like to know what the process is. I am in favor of this resolution as it stands if I know that the federal government has the process. So 1 month from now,
Yes.
if we know what the permitting process is and that there is going to be a permitting process, if we know that, I vote for this resolution as it stands if we know that. But to not know that or not understand what this sentence means, which I don't, conduct, continue, I think Charlie brings out a good point. I am in favor of this resolution as it stands with, if I can understand that the government is going to do that. I am not in favor of saying no tar sands through Raymond.
that's not what it says.
I know, but that's where I got stuck tonight, Sam. And I know that I wrote this and I said I could probably support it when I put it forward. But that's where my question has come, and I think Charlie said it far more eloquently than I did. So he's ready to go forward with it. That's the only question I have.
Well, you wrote that, and I approved it because I thought that we had reached this balance point with it. And there is a permitting process, this we know.
Well, but we don't know the process. Get me the answers. Let me see what the State Department came out with for the environmental impact study on Keystone. Let me see that. Then tell me what is the permitting process to do this. Get me those two things. I'm like Mike. I could support this if I know those things, if there is a permitting process. If they come back and say, oil sands and crude oil, there's no difference. They're interchangeable. Then why would we have a resolution? If that's what the federal government comes back with in their study and says there's no difference here and there, you can't tell the difference, this resolution doesn't mean anything at that point, because you currently have oil going through that pipeline.
But don't we already know there's differences? The
Yeah,
the oil tar
No,
goes to the bottom and the oil stays
That's
at the top?
not true. That's, see? See,
After it gets
I
out
would
of the
like
pipe.
to know if it is
The
true.
environmental people are gonna tell you it's true,
Okay.
because that's what
Is
they
Emily
want.
Figdor back there still?
But
Is she
Emily's
gone?
not a scientist.
No, but she knows the process.
She's strong one way though. It's hard to.
Well,
No, I don't. Yeah, that's.
I mean, we're talking
okay,
amongst our
we have a,
board.
excuse me, gentlemen, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Oh, okay, go ahead.
Well, Mayor, I would like to ask Selectman Reynolds if that was a friendly amendment to the resolution. And if it is, I would accept changing the language from now therefore be it resolved that through the adoption of this resolution, the town of Raymond calls upon state and federal officials to continue environmental and safety reviews of any pipeline project that could transport oil sands through Raymond.
That makes it totally weak.
No, but we don't know what they do now. That's what I'm asking.
And because, what that does is, I believe, it takes out any decision, whether the science is pro or against. It's saying we're just asking the federal and state government do their job.
Can I ask, what's the harm in waiting for a month or two on getting the environmental impact study from Keystone? What's the harm in that?
I'll accept it.
Not for this month, it will be for next month.
I mean, why is this so important that we do this tonight?
What's the harm in protecting Raymond residents? What's the harm in protecting Raymond? Project's gonna be approved in Canada this
Oh.
spring.
Well, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? Opposed? Predictable. Thank you. All right, now I'm sorry, that's over with. Motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
No,
No, I don't vote.
It was 3-2. Yeah. Motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
So you're gonna wanna
I get the bathroom first. I'll second if I get the bathroom.
Second.
with you on that.
Oh, no.
You
gotta get past him first, he seconded it.
You have to do them under Title I, Section 405, 6E, personnel issue.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session, MRSA subsection 405 6A.
Second. All in favor?
Favor?
25 years ago.
Favor?
He read that.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Somebody said second?
Yes.
All in favor? Coming out of executive session, opposed?
Mike's not here.
Oh, Mike's not
Yeah, but
here.
we can still come out of executive session.
Yeah, we got it.
And I would like to have him be able to vote.
Okay. I'll wait for Mike to show up for a vote on the town manager's,
You want me to put the volume back down for that?
I think he's coming.
he's coming right now.
You have a motion and second, just call for a vote.
We have a motion and a second?
Correct.
All in favor? Opposed?
I will make a motion to extend the town manager's contract for 1 more year.
Second.
Discussion? Charlie?
as I did last year, I just want to make it clear, we're now talking about extending this contract, I believe, if I could have it verified, to June 30th of 2016.
That's correct.
And that there are no changes to the contract as it currently exists. So it will remain exactly the same as it has been, with the various items. And last year I probably bored the public with going over some of those details, so I won't do that tonight. But basically, there are no changes to this contract. It will remain exactly the same. The severance package will remain the same. The wage increases will remain the same, or the qualifying events for the wage increase will remain the same. The contribution to ICMA will remain the same. The stipend, auto stipend, will remain the same. The conference costs will remain the same. I'm asking you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay? I think in the interest of time and fairness, that's all I have. And if I would certainly, would also say if anyone else wants to have a word to say, I'd appreciate that also.
My only comment is Mr. Willard's done a good job for the town since, I think the year 2000, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Don?
That's right.
And I think because of his 13 years of tenure and the job he's done, I think he's very deserving of his current contract, and I think it's in the town's interest to extend it one more year.
I am definitely in agreement of that as well. I want to say I've been on the select board for 7 or 8 years now, and for the first 5 or 6, maybe somewhere around there, there was a handful of different pieces that were repetitively on there. This past couple of years, they haven't been. So I feel that the very minimal amount of negative things that I had about Don, they aren't there anymore. I feel he does a very good job. I feel he's conducts himself great with the staff, does his best to pull any positive out of any bad or good situation, and proud to have him as my town manager.
Mike?
I'm in favor of renewing Don's contract. I think he does a fine job.
I'm in great agreement with everything that's been said. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? 4 to 1. Carried. Congratulations, Don.
Thank you. I look forward to serving you all in the town in the year ahead, and as I always say in my town manager's report, if there's anything that you need, any questions, concerns, assistance that you need from the town, anything you think we can do better, anything you want to know at all, please contact us. You can contact me directly or the individual staff member. We want to improve what we're doing. We want to serve you better. We want to do a good job. That's my commitment to you in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to the next item. Consideration of appointment of member and alternate to Portland Area Comprehensive Transportation System, PACS Policy Committee, and Executive Committee.
Nathan White, our Public Works Director, has agreed to serve on the Policy Committee, does not wish a position on the Executive Committee. We need to have a couple of more volunteers optimally, but at least one more to satisfy this request.
It should be from the Select Board.
Does it have to be an elected member? That was my question.
Yes.
It does.
Yeah. The next one does have to be.
Can it be planning board or budget committee elected?
No. Selectmen. Planning Board's not elected.
Budget's the only elected.
Oh, budget, all right, thank you. I just think.
No, that's a good question.
I just think
I
from
mean,
from a PAC standpoint, I mean, planning makes far more sense than we do. I mean,
Yeah, it
it's
does.
transportation, so.
What is the,
How about the budget committee? They're elected.
can we do that for the budget committee? I see a budget committee member right here, right before my very eyes.
Anybody raising their hand?
And I see his hand slowly rising.
Usually when you smile, you agree with
Yeah,
something.
you do.
It is, the meetings are held on the positive in your general neck of the woods, and they probably provide lunch.
Well, you know, Brian,
Yeah.
I told you this once before, that you do a good job on everything else, so therefore you get nominated for everything. Would you be willing to serve on this committee?
I have to get more information. I couldn't give you that.
Okay, we will get you the information.
The committee deals with regional planning with respect to transportation planning specifically, and so the idea that Raymond now, because of the expansion of the Portland suburban area, is qualified at some level to receive federal via state grant funding is basically what's going on. I'm not overly optimistic that we're going to bring in huge dollars initially, but we are now part of that compact, and so we have a say and a small voice in how that money's apportioned.
Do you know how often they meet, Tom?
I don't. Do you know, Nate?
Once a month.
Once a month.
Once a month? Where do they meet?
I believe it's GP Cog, I believe.
I'm telling, I know Brian travels, I know he has his business, and that's,
Well, maybe what we should do is to poll we could send out a memo or something to the elected officials and explain what this is and see if there's any interest.
yeah.
Yes. And presently, there's no fee, we're just incorporated because of the statistical area.
Yeah.
But they have considered in the future that they're going to be asking for fees from towns to participate. Is that my understanding, Mr. Willard?
That is correct, and because the question really becomes, is it an opt-out, opt-in thing? Is it something, where the fee might outweigh the benefit? I don't know the answers to those questions. I know that the suburban Portland communities benefit greatly from it. I don't know if we would. I just don't know enough about it.
Okay,
I would make a motion, we appoint Nate White to the policy committee and that we send out a notice of interest to elected officials for an executive committee member.
Second. Discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's what we're gonna do. Congratulations. They do have lunch, they said.
That's why he wants to do it.
Hopefully it's good food.
Nate,
Yeah.
Nate, based on what I read, they talk in acronyms. So there's lots of 4-letter, 5-letter things going on, oh yeah.
Where are we on planning board warrants then?
I don't know if, we've approved we have not approved the planning board warrant, correct?
No, basically, the board has, the planning board is, sent forward, I think, 4 articles for recommendation for the 2013 town meeting warrant. The addressing ordinance, the reductions to minimum setbacks, regarding the zoning board of appeals, net residential calculation, and backlot driveways, which is encompassed in the land use ordinance, street ordinance, and subdivision ordinance. Most of these are housekeeping measures, and, the articles themselves are available online or, at the town office for people to review. Do you wanna know what the board's recommendation was
Yes.
for approval?
In the
The
package.
addressing ordinance was neutral. The reductions from minimum setbacks and appeals, which is in the shoreline zoning, and the reduction of minimum setbacks in the land use ordinance, that was neutral as well. The net residential calculation was neutral and backlot driveways, which is going to be split into two warrants, which is because of the fact that, one of them changed a whole ordinance, which is the street ordinance, and the other one covered the land use ordinance and subdivision, so, and both of those are positive, so.
So what's the process, Jim?
Well, you just need to make a motion to send these out
Yeah.
on to town meeting in a warrant.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Charlie?
I'll just take it from the backlot driveway and street ordinance. This came before the planning board last year.
Yep.
And they, I think, took under advisement that they needed to do more work on it before it came to town.
Correct.
And there's been a series now of public comment and meetings that have, I think, taken care of and addressed almost all of the concerns from last year.
Yep.
Why this was not on last year's.
Absolutely, because what they try to do is, there's a very cumbersome process, so what they try to do is move the application components to one ordinance, and then the design components to their each individual respective areas within their ordinances, and then refer to them as necessary, to help make the application process more clear and, thoughtful for people coming forward, as well as giving the code enforcement officer the ability to authorize backlot driveway permits without coming before the board, but he would still have the authority to either refer it to the planning board or, in the event that it needed waivers or if it was too technical.
Right. And then the 1986 zoning board of appeals ordinance change, I believe that was generated by issues that had arisen
Correct.
at the ZBA.
Yes.
And truly is a true housekeeping measure. I'm surprised it came in with a neutral recommendation.
I believe the only reason why these come in as neutral or positive, neutral was more in the sense that it didn't originate from the planning board themselves. So giving it neutral still only requires a majority vote, but, where it wasn't their ordinance. They did try to amend it themselves, but at the advisement of the town attorney, it didn't go through.
That's all.
Okay, that's it. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Done. Next issue, consideration, let's see, zoning board of appeals request for the resignation of a member. How that, give me the history of that, would you?
We just have a member who signed on back in 2009, and she's only been to one meeting since signing on, and the chair, Matt Schaefer, has approached her and asked her to come to meetings, and since the 2 meetings that followed that request, she still hasn't shown. It's not that the Board of Appeals wants to kick anyone off, because, having volunteers, they certainly appreciate anyone that comes forward. It's just they're more concerned that they want her to be a more adamant member because we only meet like 4 times a year, so each time you come is a learning experience that they feel like she should be taking a part of, especially being an alternate, so.
I know, yes.
If I could just
Oh,
speak
you
to
asked,
this
right.
issue,
Of
because I'm
course,
on the
yeah.
board, it's not the purview of the zoning board of appeals to appoint or remove members. That's what the select board does. So the recommendation of the zoning board of appeals was that this individual be asked to resign because of lack of attendance, despite the attempts on the part of the chair of the board to contact her and encourage her to show up.
I've also been unsuccessful in that regard, so I don't think it's unreasonable at this time to send a, certified mailing indicating that intent, if that is your intent.
Why would you ask her to resign at this point and just let her know that she's off the board?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, well, I'm not saying to ask her to resign, I'm saying to say a determination's been made that you're no longer a board member. Thank you for your service.
Right.
A nice letter.
Yeah.
And I believe we're working towards trying to develop some bylaws for the ZBA for attendance and policy.
Okay, motion?
I'll make a motion for the town manager to send a letter to Mrs. Philpo and let her know that she is no longer a member of the zoning board of appeals and that we will be advertising for a new member.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor? I really didn't want to do that. Okay, the next issue, consideration of fiscal year 2013-14 municipal budget. Town manager proposed budget, warrant articles will be discussed. I understand the warrant articles are not available.
Right, well, that was a miscommunication among staff. Normally, they come, the warrant articles would come in April, so you would normally have a budget deliberation, the Board of Selectmen, based on the information that you received over the budget meetings. I guess just one budget meeting where information was provided, a previous meeting where questions were asked. So normally the Selectmen would go over the budget, make recommendations, and then we'd come back with the warrant articles for approval in the April meetings. Is that correct, Louise?
That's right.
So there was a little bit of confusion amongst the staff on the timing issues and so forth, but that's what we've done in prior years, and that's I guess what you're charged with attempting to do tonight.
So where are we at? We don't have the article.
Well, I think it's pretty difficult to go through this budget. I mean,
Yeah.
we had all kinds of questions that came up during the budget finance meeting. I think all those questions were answered. The dilemma we face now is that we have this huge increase in front of us. How do we deal with it? And I think there are many ways to attack this. You know, one of the things we need to do is always recognize that taxpayers in Raymond, you know, we're gonna try and do the best that we can as far as keeping the tax rate where it is right now. Having said that, I mean, there's a lot of items in this budget that are still not a certainty yet. For example, the town of Gray, $10,000, you know, is that gone? We're gonna add $35,000 to the paving account and ask to go out for a bond. We have the library and the Raymond Waterways each asking for an additional $5,000 for their budgets. Increase in the public safety, you know, $31,000. 25,000 more in public works on top of the 35,000. Question is, how do you deal with it? We're sending a warrant out at town meeting to hopefully successfully get $900,000. How are we going to deal with that? We are already, our fund balance is almost right around $2 million, which we all feel is adequate for where we need to be. So you need to think about how are you going to deal with that $900,000 that comes in. Does it help you towards road maintenance? Does it help you fund a lot of these requests? I think it's going to be a combination of things. I don't think I'm ready to approve the budget the way it was presented. I think there's some tweaks that need to happen to it to reduce some of the costs in that budget. I also think bonding, you know, we have 2 more years of big bond payments and then they go away. So the timing of when you issue a bond,
that's right,
makes a lot of sense. So yeah, we could. The easy solution is take that 900,000, pull 200,000 out of it, and go, okay, no tax increase. That's the easy solution. I think we need to be a little more creative than that this time around, and try and figure out how do we use that $900,000 appropriately. And I'm all ears, you know. How do we do that? And I think we need 2 to 3 more meetings just as a select board.
I agree.
I need to see spreadsheets is what I need of different alternatives. I think the town will support getting $900,000 for a quarter acre of land. And then how do we spend that money wisely?
So the one question I would have would be, if you could help us in some way to get a general direction moving, that would be a step in the right direction, right?
Yes.
If we could get a few directions out of this evening's meeting as to, I mean, some of that you've mentioned, for instance, I mean, we can certainly pursue them and see if anything's changed or if we have any new information. And we do in some instances. I mean, Nathan has been able to negotiate a flat contract with P&K. I've been able to negotiate with the Pine Tree Waste. It's a few $1,000s each. I haven't been able, because I couldn't get it done in time for the budget meeting, but I haven't been able to put the fine details on the Pine Tree issue, but there may be a little bit more that could be eked out by looking again at the roads that are difficult to service, if you want me to do that, and look at, you know, potential, there's a couple of potential roads that could make a change. I don't think that we're talking huge money, we're talking $8,000-$10,000,
Yeah.
if that's worth going for.
Yeah, I think I still think you need to grab those.
Well, that is a potential, so we could try that one, but it's a service reduction, and so if you give me that direction, I can move in that direction.
I'm not sure I'm asking you to look at a service reduction more as, I mean, I want to see the compensation study committee for one. I want to see where we're at. I mean, you know, we have $40,000 in increases for employees. You know, let's look at the compensation study committee, see where the numbers are, and, you know, maybe this is the year we go, okay, you know, there may not be a raise this year.
I'll call Rolf.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important data to have. I really want to look at, you know, Charlie and I met and talked about the CIP and say, okay, can we use that $900,000? And Charlie did the work on this, so I'm not going to take credit for it. But can you use that $900,000 to fund that CIP for a few years and make it go away for a few years in future budgets, so you still have some cash on hand? So I think there are ways to look at this, but I would need to sit down with the numbers but.
Well, I echo, and I'm glad, and after that 5-hour marathon of last Tuesday night, which hopefully we won't recreate tonight.
We're on our way.
No, I think we're going to do better tonight. That we take a little bit more time to look at these issues, let all parties, let the process evolve so we can come up with the very best decisions that we can make for this town. Part of that evolution is to recognize what we've done right, and we've done an awful lot right. We've established an audit defensible undesignated fund balance now of $2 million, where the auditors say it should be, which if you're thinking about bonds, I'm not as worried about the unfunded liability of the health insurance as I am that our undesignated fund balance is where the auditors say it should be. We've eliminated the excessive use of the overlay, which is done always in September and October, or August and September, where at one time we had an overlay of $388,000, which is just putting back into your mill rate what was taken out at town meeting. Now we're down to $27,000, which is what an overlay should look like. We've been 7 years LD1 compliant. We've hired full-time, in this time frame of 7 years, we've hired full-time paramedics, new ambulance, new dispatch, District 1 and 2 upgrades, lowered response time, increased employee health and safety programs, increased inspections, increased reimbursements, added marine safety boats. We've acquired newer vehicles for town and public works, upgraded the grader, the street sweeper, the skid. We acquired a skid loader. The International Dump acquired old District 1 fire station, which is now in service for public works. Town hall improvements with roof, windows, and furnace. We've upgraded our e-government capabilities. We have new phone systems, video broadcast capabilities, online registrations, information that's much more readily available online with agendas, minutes, and new PCs. We've given pay and benefit increases to our employees 6 out of the past 7 years. We've increased collection of delinquent taxes, acquired Morgan Meadows, increased the open space fund, assisted in the green print with funding. We've begun our woodlot management program. We have $591,000 shy of paying off $4.5 million of debt. These are all important. These are things that we've done, all within the last 7 years, where we've been responsible, as I believe, with our, both the tax rate and the use of taxpayer dollars. We returned $70,000 of taxpayer funds from the assessing reserve, and we've increased funding to the library and Raymond Waterways, and we've even accomplished single sort in that time frame. Well, we haven't been as good as we also acquired in our past history $1.94 million in interest that we've paid banks and bonding companies for $6.5 million in bonds. So when I have to critically review when we should pull a bond and how much that bond should be, I'm constantly reminded that we've already committed to this town in the last 11 years $1.94 million that we'll never get back. And maybe when Joe says we have to be creative on how we go forward with our budgets, that's something we should consider. We've let our roads deteriorate, we know that, and if this community has sent any kind of message to budget finance, to the select board, to the administration, is that it's no longer, the time is done. We've created financial crises in state government and federal government, and we've created a financial crisis on our roads in the town of Raymond. And it's time we do something about it and have the political will to do it. Because everybody points fingers, but they all point back here. And they all point to the Budget Finance Committee. That's where it is. It's not the taxpayer, because it hasn't gone forward to the taxpayer. And it will now going forward. We haven't established a strict CIP program, and that needs to be done. This idea of not specifically saying what is in a CIP and what we're asking taxpayers to reserve for needs to be done. And that's the discipline, and I think Joe brought that up once before when he said, I want to see more spreadsheets. I want to see more specifics as to how we're spending the money, or going forward, what money we're going to spend. To that end, and Joe has asked for just some thoughts about creativity, and I know now we're not going to go through, so I'll try to be brief. There's a potential here for the people in the town of Raymond. Over this budget process, one thing we did do right is we went to our public safety personnel and we went to our public works and said, over the next 4 years, what do we really need? What have we on our pay-as-you-go program, our used car program, our used grader program, our used ambulance program? What do we really need? What is this town over the next 4 years? Not a wish list. This is beyond the wish list. These are things to say we're going to put Raymond on the right track to be going into the future for our taxpayers, having a program that we can all feel good and trust in. And those numbers came in at, for the next 4 years, from the fire department, $890,000. This is new and additional spending now. Not the $161,000 that is in the proposed budget over LD1. This is new additional spending. Public Works came in at $629,000 for the next 4 years, and we know we're going to need somewhere in that another $2 million for the roads. That, in most of the work that's been done by the Road Improvement Committee and the Public Works Department, is we're going to need about $2 million. That comes up to $3.5 million that this town needs. And as Joe has mentioned, we do know that one thing this town can do to start to commit itself to taking care of its roads and its CIP is to commit that $900,000 when we get it. We're going to let Verizon pay some of our lack of political will. It's Crown Castle.
Oh,
Crown Castle. Is that Verizon though? No. Okay. We're going to let Crown Castle help us do this, where we couldn't help ourselves before. And these are just proposals, and these are numbers that have to be vetted and run out both to the departments, town administration, and hopefully, once we get these finalized, it'll give us something a little bit more to talk about. You take that out, that 900,000 out, now our capital needs is $2.6 million. If you go ahead and reduce the fire department equipment reserve by down to $25,000, $50,000 over the next 4 years, knowing that you're gonna get in your CIP dedicated to it, $890,000. That's a cost savings of the budget of $200,000. Now we're down to $2.4 million. Then you take and you lower the public works equipment reserve from $35,000 down to $15,000. 4 years, $20,000 a year, that's $80,000. We're now down to $2.3 million. So if we can go to the taxpayers and figure out a way to increase to LD1 again, the $60,000 in the budget, and find places, and we've just found in this year's budget alone, those 2 lines where we can reduce the town budget, we could possibly, with the commitment, go forward with a little over a $2 million bond at 2%, which I agree is a great deal, and is probably going to cost us, again, probably $250,000 in interest over 10 years. However, if we run these numbers and they verify and we take a creative approach, we could possibly take care of our CIP budget for the next 4 years for the fire department, the CIP budget for public works for the next 4 years with a lot of brand new equipment, even going forward to the replacement program for the ambulances, and at the same time have our roads taken care of for, instead of $2 million just for the roads, $2.3 million just for all of our needs. And I think if we now have done away with the 5-hour contentious meetings and the line item budgets, and is it worth $8,000 or are you nitpicking over $2,000? It's now time for all of us to come together in a bigger sense, what's best for the community. Consider these options and look to see, is there some potential in this approach? And I'm hoping that with 2 or 3 more meetings, which incidentally, most towns right now, we're not even talking about loss of circuit breaker. We're not talking about the loss of other revenue sharing from the town, the loss of homestead, which could affect all of us, that this board won't have a whole lot to say if we lose homestead or if we lose circuit breaker. It's just going to happen. That's going to be a tax increase. But we have a potential, and other towns have spent 4, 5, 6 meetings where their budget finance committee and their select board have dealt with these budgets. And knowing now that we may be acquiescing to the need for 3 or 4 more meetings, I'm glad we don't have the warrant articles in front of us tonight. And I would offer these numbers, and I will sit down with anyone who wants to vet these numbers, because that's what it's going to take. This is just me sitting at my kitchen table, so there's some room here, and there will be some sacrifice, and the sacrifice will be in this year's budget. How do we knock that $161,000 down creatively? And it may be some sacrifice in the from pay raises. It could be insurance increases. It certainly would be in those reserves. But I think you'll see both fire and public safety, public safety and public works. If you release some of that this year's reserve that you have in there, not all of it, not saying all of it, just release some of it, what you'll get back with the CIP program going forward through a bond is going to far exceed that and take care of your needs.
Almost feel like I want to clap.
Yeah.
No, no, we don't allow clapping in here.
No, I'm just playing.
No, I think one of the things that is important is to say to Don, if we were to give you $900,000, what would you do with it? Because when we had the budget hearing, nobody knew about the $900,000. It wasn't a done deal yet. Now we've all reached agreement and it just has to pass a town meeting. You know, what would you do with $900,000? How would you fund that 900,000? You know, what would you use it for? I think, you know, knowing that you have to spend the bond in 3 years, can you break it up and, you know, stagger some of the equipment needs that you have for the next 3 years, including the road, you know, $2 million for roads? And, you know, what's in reserve, what's being held in some of these reserve accounts, and include that with the 900,000. How much of a bond do we need to take out? And, you know, I looked at Charlie's numbers, some of them, you know, are a little shaky, but I think that the scope of it makes sense in many ways.
Originally, I had understood that we were going to put the proceeds, assuming it happens, we don't know if it's going to happen yet, so it's a difficult
Right.
you know, metric to book and budget for something you don't have.
Right.
And so that's what you're trying to do in a certain sense. And so we didn't do that because we don't have the money first, and we don't know what the vote of the town will be. We don't know what the vote of the budget committee will be on that. We assume everything's affirmative, let's say. So I mean, you could do to some degree what you're suggesting, but the original direction that I thought I had was that we were going to get that money and then have a very you know, deliberative process as to how we would apportion the money or not apportion it. I originally expected that it was going into a reserve for a period of time. Well, we did that, so we haven't taken that amount of money into account with respect to this budget. We could do that if that's the direction. We certainly can do that.
I mean, I would like that as an option.
Yeah, yeah, and I would tell you that, I mean, the CIP that we presented is a CIP based on replacing and moving forward with what we have for equipment now that we've been able to acquire largely creatively. So I wouldn't foreclose the idea that you could still do some things creatively, which would reduce your gap if you're trying to do this gap reduction sort of calculation. But it was in response to what seemed as though it was a you know, critical comment that the town didn't have a full-funded, didn't have a multi-year full-funded CIP. And we're saying that in order to have a full-funded CIP, you have to have the funds. And so if you're saying that, okay, go ahead and develop a full-funded CIP, you have the funds by using this combination that he's laid out, a bond and the sale of the easement, then that's a whole different ballgame for the employees and for me, not one that we even considered. So we certainly could definitely consider that and come back.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I don't want to do is, we have a $2 million undesignated fund balance. If you just take the 900,000 and add it into the fund balance and you're sitting on $3 million as a town, I'm just not sure that's fair to the taxpayers.
Right.
Yeah, you just
Well,
hoarding cash.
I fully expected that it would be apportioned someday, but if you're asking me what I thought you might do with it,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to some degree I make my living guessing what you might do. So what I thought you might do was put it in roads, largely put it in roads.
Which is a possibility.
That's what I thought you might do, but you haven't decided, so now you're telling me that you want to use it as or possibly use it as a budgetary stabilization mechanism for the CIP moving forward for up to a 10-year period. We could look at that.
And one of the critical pieces I overlooked was in 2015-16, we will have what amounts to it's 3 bonds, and then the Eco-Main at $20,000 will be retired. That will bring in, 2 years into this program, the town of Raymond will now free up $306,000 per year in available funds. So if you run the numbers, and if we have a chance to run the numbers, and this might be shaky, but the shaky part of it is, to me, is within 2 years, if we keep that in the back of our minds, because that $300,000 is already in our budgets now, that this $2.3 million or whatever number of bond that it is that we take out for 10 years will self-fund itself. It'll pay for itself. And that's not accounting for in 2017-18 when another $200,000 comes back into the town for future planning from other bonds, public safety building being one, when those are retired. So with much more experienced and professional people looking at just some of these options and saying, where is the town of Raymond going to be? Let's not try to go more than 5 years. Where are we going to be in 5 years? We actually may be pretty much at the same mill rate talking the same game we are now about all the good things we did right, and then looking at our next 5-year CIP and our next annual budget. So I'm just asking for that consideration, and for all the people who are in the room who are now gonna hopefully pick that apart and find the faults in it. And I'm first one to admit that I'm not an economist. So I hopefully we have something to think about over the next month.
So what we'll do is we'll go back, if that's your direction, and try to work something up along that theme, and we'll be in touch about scheduling another meeting.
Well, we had the budget finance meeting on the 25th,
Which you may want to push out.
or making a selectmen meeting that night.
Right, push theirs out.
Yeah, and,
Or we may want to have a joint meeting.
yeah, I think a joint meeting makes a lot of sense also. with new
Another
information.
one.
As long as we don't ask a lot of questions, we'll be in good shape. You know, but, you know, the 25th, the 26th, we could also have a meeting. I mean, because we are gonna start arriving at a time crunch.
Yeah.
You know, poor Louise hates it when we go past April, to send the warrants out. So I think we're gonna have a lot of meetings between the end of March and early April, and try and finalize this. And hopefully by then, we'll have a much better idea where we are with revenue sharing, general
Yeah,
assistance, all those things.
On that point, not that it really makes a big difference, it doesn't. I mean, I made a deliberate decision not to book all of the governor's cuts because, you know, in my own mind, I don't believe that that's a realistic stance. Some towns are doing that for various reasons, political mostly. But I was not at the meeting, as I'm not a member anymore, but the main town and city managers recently had their Winter Institute, and they took a poll as to what towns were doing. About 80% of the towns were doing what we're doing, and about 20% were doing the you know, mental exercise of what if all the cuts are approved. And so I chose on my own. I don't have the listserv now, so I didn't know what the towns were doing, but I was curious. And so about 80% are doing what we're doing. Kind of playing a wait and see. And I believe that the end result is gonna end up being, I think, closer to the reality we have now than a reality of no
Yeah,
intergovernmental
there's gonna
revenue.
be some decrease, there has to be, because of the
Correct.
size of the budget they're dealing with.
Right, but I'm saying it isn't gonna be what he's proposed.
Right, I agree with that too.
And I talked with our state representative, got some guidance that way, so it wasn't without some thought process.
So we're proposing a joint meeting?
On the 25th, which is already scheduled.
On the 25th, okay.
Right. Mike, what do you think of some of these ideas?
I don't understand the difference of the CIP as proposed versus the action going forward. I look at it, I think it's an interesting, I have been waiting for those bonds to kind of mature and to know that we would have some of that money freed up. Some of my concerns, you know, are how are we gonna make up that 161 at this point to not hit an LD1 override? But at the same time, our budget is so low. I was looking at a news article this weekend about a town of 3,500 that had a municipal valuation of about 990 million, very close to ours, but, you know, lesser population, and, you know, their town had a $4.5 million budget, and they had more than 30 full-time employees, and I looked at that and I went, wow, I'm glad I'm not in those shoes, but at the same time, we have our own issues, so.
Yeah, I had a similar thought. I just share this as quick as I can, but I recently went to a retirement party in my old town, and some of my colleagues, you know, I've kind of had, I went from, you know, been 3 different towns, and I was started in the Western Mountains, went down the coast, came back, you know, to Raymond, and so kind of heading back in that direction, and the joke was, you know, one more jump and you'll be back where you started, but I was there, and I looked at their budget, and they're a town of 2,500 roughly, dying mill town, only about $600,000 different than our budget. We have a very low budget, folks, a very low budget.
And that makes it harder for us. I mean,
And that makes it harder, because now you want to go, you've had 7 years with no budget increase, you know, you want to have, moving forward, I'm not saying it can't be done, I mean, we've done this, so, gone this far. We have among the lowest mill rate in the developed world with any services at all. I mean, we don't have policing, we don't have, you know, water sewer departments, things like that. I mean, some of it's, you know, through the Portland Water District, of course, but we don't have a highly developed, in terms of multiple departments and disciplines that a lot of other towns our size have. And so that, hence you have that smaller than average mill rate. And I wanted this year's discussion, if I had my way, and I don't often get my way, but if I had my way, I'd want it to be about what's the future of the town. It sounds like that's what you're doing. You know, where do we want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? Is this path we're on of just looking at cutting the budget each year a sustainable and wise path, or is something else in order?
If we're gonna bond, I mean, when you look what the stock market did today, those interest rates are only gonna hold for probably less than a year now.
Right.
Because, I mean, there's gonna be some inflationary pressure being put on interest rates, and they're gonna be starting to be driven up. So our opportunity is within the next 6 months to do this.
I'm pro bonding, and there was a comment made about the town's in interest costs. I would say that was a good value, a good deal, because the alternative was to raise the money in 1 year. We tried that at a town meeting, you know, 9 or 10 years ago, and they sent us packing. So we came back with a proposal to do some road work with a bond, and we bonded for very, very little. I mean, when you look at the level of bond indebtedness of this town compared to its theoretical limits, we are exceedingly low. I mean, in the cellar compared to most communities. And so the town has a great capacity to bond. The rates are very favorable. I mean, who wouldn't say that's a good idea, if you wanted to go that way?
But remember, those bonds that we took out 10 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever they were, those are at a fairly high interest rate. They were knocked down. The thing is, we went through the municipal bond bank, which is not the cheapest way to go.
It's not the cheapest way to go. We're going to look at private issue this time, but I would say that they were competitive rates for the times.
Right.
And you can always
Right.
look.
And we did get a refund, because they were called and reissued, and so we did get a refund, but they were still high interest rates for where we are today. Right.
Mike?
I would agree with Joe that the rock bottom interest rates are heading away. I know that the 10-year rates on borrowing jumped in the last month about half a point, and that's the first jump in almost a year. So, you know, the folks are placing their bets. You know, 10 years are starting to see the changes. So the cost of money has gone up a little bit in 10-year interest. Part of what I was going to bring up tonight, and we can discuss it another time, or if there's no reason to discuss it, is I did ask about the possibility of a sheriff's patrol for this town. You know, except for the crowd we got here for the pipeline resolution, the only other thing that I've had asked of me has been some dedicated sheriff. And so I know this is a tough time to think about $140,000. I don't know what would happen if you sent that to a town meeting, if anybody has any interest in it. But I have had a couple of folks ask, because they're away so much, you know, and their place is empty so much. And we have a lot of back roads and a lot of dirt roads and a lot of seasonal properties that are, you know, you hear about it anecdotally, but it doesn't make the news very much about how many of our homes are getting broken into. So
Problem is getting one contract sheriff to think you're gonna stop that.
No, I don't think it's gonna, it's not gonna stop, but it's, but that's the question. At what point do we have enough issue with that? And I was gonna ask for a discussion, but understanding the numbers we're facing without a large outcry from other citizens, I can't see it going forward, but even by talking about it, maybe we'll hear from somebody else who's interested. You know, I still look at some of the numbers we have to make up from last year. We did take the 70,000 out of the assessing reserve. I mean, that's a hole. That's a $70,000 hole right off the butt that puts us over LD1. Even if everything stayed status, we're over LD1 with just that, you know, eliminating that undesignated fund balance as a goal. So that's, you know, we're already in the hole by eliminating that. So we do have some discussion and some understanding on what we ask the town for going forward.
Charlie?
Yeah, as much as, and I've heard the sheriff's deputy, actually, I've gotten some of that information also from the sheriff's department, but I'd like to try to deal with one crisis at a time. And we have, for many years, put off both the CIP for equipment and the roads. And so, with the budget that comes in under LD1 is a $60,000 increase. So we're really only talking $161,000. So the $70,000 doesn't really play into it anymore, Mike. It's done, it's done. We gave that back to the taxpayers. That was a good thing. It doesn't play into it any longer. What we have is a budget proposed to us in front of us that shows $161,000 over LD1, but not a zero increase budget, because there's $60,000 increase in that budget. So when we sit down and start tweaking the reserves and what may be just those one or two sacrifices, for instance, you keep the health insurance intact, you keep all of the deductibles that we pay intact, you keep the 100% single, 85% family intact, but you may say to employees, for the second time in 8 years, we may not have a raise this year. You may not get the 2%. And you start adding up every one of those line items, and you'll see we'll quickly eliminate the $161,000. And most of that is going to be picked up in the future 4 years if we adequately fund and find a way to fund and bond our CIP budgets for fire and public safety and public works.
Have we spoken to our health insurance broker about where we are?
Nancy, have
We
you?
won't have pricing for like almost May.
Have you had a preliminary discussion?
All they've told me is Harvard Pilgrim's numbers are coming in looking good.
Yeah. I think you may want to explore that before the next meeting. It's getting closer to where you'll have a little more experience. Because reports, for my company, our health insurance went down. I think a lot of, Southern Maine, there's been a lot of health insurance rates going down, depending on your demographics. You may want to explore that right now. So.
Steve has something back. Steve?
I don't know, Steve Crockett, 85. Would it make sense to change the renewal date? Because every year you ask about the insurances, and we don't know, and then always we got to vote on them.
Yeah.
Can we change the renewal dates?
It's gonna follow our budget. You can't. Our budget goes July through June, so that's when we renew.
Okay.
Why?
Pardon?
Why?
Because that's when you're appropriated the money.
You'd have to split the year. You'd have to do a split.
Well, I know, that's what I'm just trying to understand. When I say, well, why, if you split, what, is it illegal?
It's just hard to budget.
But is it easier to budget more effectively when you know half of your expenses going into the next one?
Well, normally 90 days out, you have some idea where your insurance costs are. So that's why I think by the end of March, there should be a pretty good idea.
In the old days, there was a much smaller percentage of our overall, right, so it was probably easier to wait, but that's fine.
And something that might help that, Mike, is, and I've seen it in the Cumberland County budgets and many other towns, and I believe we even used to do actuals. If not the actuals for this fiscal year, but we had the numbers for the actuals for, let's say, for instance, 2010, 2011. So we might not have them for 11-12, or have them for 11-12, we don't have them for 12-13, but we're trying to decide 13-14, but at least we can go back 2 years and see what our actual expenditures have been in every one of these departments. We used to do that. We used to also have a budget analysis. If you take a look at the the town report that we put out last year, that we give to the community to walk in front at town meeting, and we're trying to encourage people to go to town meeting. This is the report we got last year. You know what we used to get? We used to get a budget detail, we used to get a budget analysis, and we got the revenues. Now we don't even really get great line items for the most part. So I'm saying, we've kind of moved in the wrong direction when it comes to how we want to do these budgets and and I think that's what we've seen is the outcome of that is more contention over little items, whether Public Works took manure out of a barn or something. It's things that don't matter. But when we've gotten less information and less and less and less, it creates that environment of, well, why am I getting less information in this day and age with all the electronic reporting? And we get fine results. Our auditors think we're great, and I do too. And I think we just need to kind of get back to some basics here. And again, the political will to say, what are the problems in front of us right now? We know it's equipment, we know it's some of the building issues, and we know it's the roads. And we have an opportunity in the next few years to straighten that out, and I think get the support of the community at the same time. When we just talk about tax rate, that's not what defines the town, the tax rate. What we're paying as a mill rate does not define the town. Our gross municipal budget does not define the town. There's many, many other very complex, how much you're paying for the schools, how many households, how much non-tax, non-property tax revenue is coming in. All of those impact the decisions you make on a budget. It's not just about the tax rate. What we've been able to do over many years, though, is to make sure that we always kept our eye on that ball based on valuation, based on household incomes, that we don't want to raise taxes any way you do it. You can do it by valuation, you can do it by mill rate, but we've been conscious not to try to keep things as fiscally responsible as we can, and we've succeeded in that. And though we're sometimes described as being cheap or the Raymond way, I don't see that. I just haven't had that type of feedback from our employees that they think we're not a good place to work, or from the citizens thinking that they're just always complaining about not getting services. Just the contrary. I think most of us will agree that we get very few complaints about services in this town. And maybe Don gets them the most, but then again, he's paid to get them. But we don't get those, that our services are so hillbilly-ish, that we're driving around in Granny's old pickup truck. Some of that is true, and we're going to try to rectify that, but that hasn't been the experience in the last 6 or 7 years. We've been LD1 compliant, we've done a good job, we've been, as I've said, we've been looked at by other towns as a model. How do you do it? Well, some of it is the people sitting here, and some of it is the information and the feedback we get from the public.
Are we done for this evening?
Looking forward to March 25th.
Okay. We'll meet on March 25th with the Budget Finance Committee. There's no vote meeting.
Sam,
Yes.
would you announce nomination papers, just get that on the air?
That's coming.
That's coming.
Yeah.
It's under, yeah, it's gonna be town manager. All right, it's time for public comment. Yes, sir.
Mayor?
Yes?
Hi, Kevin Fay, Spiller Hill Road. Hopefully this will be easy. You guys have had a full night. full plate, so hopefully this will be pretty benign. Here to talk actually about a zoning issue this evening. Nothing to do with the zoning issues that you folks covered earlier this evening. Specifically, my wife and I, in addition to Spiller Hill, also have property out in the Raymond Cape area, Lower Raymond Cape specifically. And I'm sure you're aware at some level that the town of Fry Island has a proposal for a parking facility in that area. I'm sure you've even probably gotten some correspondence about it. When I walked in, Mr. Clark saw me. I think he did like a little bit of a double take and sort of dreaded my appearance because I think I've had a number of different sort of emails and letters to him. Specifically around sort of a concern we have about the zoning that's currently governing the shoreline zone, covering this parking lot issue. As we started to take like a little bit of a deeper dive into it, we became aware that the zoning for the shoreline zone is pretty sparse in terms of detail, and I think that may very well be the issue that sort of has brought about the Fry Island issue. Going forward from there, what I was, I guess, charged with by some of my neighbors is to start to spend a little bit of time to explore some possible modifications we might make to our zoning. Specifically to sort of protect the rural character of our neighborhoods and also our resources, in this case Sebago. As a first step in doing so, I had the opportunity to meet with town staff who did provide me some good guidance and sort of input. Was very helpful. Getting some direction in terms of possible contacts at Maine DEP, even the Portland Water District. Reason for bringing it up tonight is our goal is to, obviously we're very concerned and worried about sort of the possibility of things like parking lots in our rural areas, in our neighborhoods. So obviously, you know, we want to, going forward, I think the horse has already left the barn with regard to sort of the current Fry Island proposal. But our hope is going forward, if we can start to sort of think about making some modifications to prevent something like this from happening, either to a greater extent down the road. Because I think even though the Fry Island proposal at present is for 40-odd spaces, they did make mention of their goal to do something in vicinity of 250-odd spaces, which seems to be pretty inconsistent with not only the town's comprehensive plan, but sort of the whole, you know, values and character of our neighborhoods. So our goal at this point, I think this is more sort of an FYI for you folks. I think the fact that you're all aware of this leads me to believe some people have maybe even been in correspondence with you. Some of the people in my neighborhood are pretty up in arms to the point where they're, I think, calling anyone and everyone who they think can sort of do something to stop this. I don't expect you to sort of stop anything at this point in time. This is more just sort of an FYI to let you know that this is an avenue that we're thinking of going down. We've done some exploration at this point with the assistance of town staff, who's given us some, at least some leads to maybe start to do some things in this area. And it's more just sort of in case anything comes into your email inbox or into your voicemails to let you know that this is something we're exploring at this time. Obviously too late for 2013 town meeting, but hopefully in 2014 we'd have something sensible that would offer sort of, you know, folks in our neighborhoods a little bit more protection than currently is in our zoning. So
thank you.
Just an FYI.
That's a planning board issue.
That's a planning board
But,
issue.
you know, I don't know where we are in the whole Fry Island. Has it been approved by the planning? I don't even know.
No, it's still pending. I fully realize it's a planning board issue. It's more of sort of an issue to let you folks know that this is something that, you know, we'll obviously go through the processes, and we were informed of the processes, you know, during our meeting. And I think it's more just sort of an FYI in case you get something that comes across the bow to let you know that this is something that we're starting.
We've gotten a couple of shots across the bow.
I think it was from our meeting. We had about an hour meeting, I guess. And
yes, very helpful.
So you asked whether this could be done, and I said it could be. It's more of a courtesy call, something to make sure the selectmen are aware of your interest in what you are working on, and so that it's perfectly appropriate for public comment to let them know what you're working on, but fully understanding that it's a planning board issue, and that's the, so you know that, and we discussed all that.
I think one of the concerns is where the planning board goes if they approve this project, whether they approve 40 or 250, because you can't retroactively change things.
Right.
There have been towns that have tried that and lost in the lawsuit, so
Yeah.
you have to be careful.
Oh, I fully know that. It's like when I told some of my neighbors that I was coming to speak to you tonight, one of the first things that was asked of me is, well, ask them to put a stop to it. And I don't think that's within your purview to do that, specifically not on an active proposal. So, again, as Mr. Willard said, just a courtesy, in case you do get something that, that comes up and you're asked about it, just to let you know that we are working on this.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. That's a good, Peter, yes.
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. Just a couple of observations on your conversation about the budget. Number one, and I'm just speaking for myself, I have a lack of confidence in town government based on the history of the roads. So I am very, very interested in the bond because the bond commits the money. And anything short of that, I'm going to have a problem with, because what I need to see is that the roads are addressed. Also, I work for the largest employer in Lewiston. In 2011, we got 0% increase as employees. In 2012, we got 2%, and in 2013, we got 0%. A couple of items. I did speak at the last meeting, and I do, in reviewing the bylaws, understand that the purpose of public comment, as I understand it, is to not really so much raise concerns as it's to propose or future agenda items. However, I do know that the bylaws are saying that the chair needs to have 7 days prior to the agenda the request. So I will formally put these requests in for agenda items. The one I spoke about last month was, and I would ask that a policy or a bylaw stating that the position of chairperson and parliamentarian not reside in the same individual. I'd ask that that be put on the agenda for discussion based on the definition of parliamentarian. And I won't go into details. I just ask that that be considered as an agenda item, and I will submit it in writing. Secondly, just I'd like to request that there be an employee use of town-owned equipment, vehicles, and facilities policy placed on the agenda for discussion. I am privy to a response from the chair, from Selectman Levitt. When he did request this last, it goes into history. I won't bore anybody with it about the number of times he requested it. However, I'm troubled by, I also found that, this is a quote, I also found that the town manager had addressed your concerns and explained the allowed activities that were being observed at the facilities. And I guess my question would be, but my overall question is why there is the reluctance to just discuss this. How, if in fact there is no policy, then how do you know what's an allowed activity? I'm just at a loss as to how you do that. I would tell you that some other individuals recently have been up here discussing concerns about transparency, about the appearance that things are not being done up front. And so I will tell you that I've noted in the last 3 weeks, no less than 5 elected officials in this town making reference to those issues. And so I'm at a loss as to why the chair feels that there is not enough interest from elected officials. And if I were just to quote some of them, I don't drive around checking what town employees are doing. This is a PR or communication issue. And I am not saying that this is right or wrong, but it should be considered a benefit. And I consider those all direct references to questions about use, proper or not, of town facilities, town equipment, town vehicles. And I would say that if we truly want to be transparent and not give the sense to the town when they're observing these things, that we just have these things discussed up front. I would tell you that, and I'm not going to keep people here longer than have to be, but the town of Old Orchard Beach, it's one line. Employees shall not directly or indirectly use or allow the use of town property of any kind for other than official activities. The town of Madison. The Madison Board of Selectmen hereby define the parameters of acceptable use of town property by groups, individuals, members of the public, and town employees to safeguard the public interest and coordinate requests for use of public facilities. Just a brief list. These towns in Maine have policies similar to the one that's being requested. Berwick, Wiscasset, Buxton, Kennebunkport, Turner, Brunswick, Cape Elizabeth, Holton. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
I think the town manager said short list.
Right, because we had done a very detailed survey of towns that have no such policy. That's a short list, and but I'm happy to have the discussion. I think you have to have the discussion to I guess, make the judgment as to whether we're, different in some way than some of the other towns, and I think you're going to find that to be true.
But the thing is, we had a discussion.
Several times, yeah.
Several times.
Yeah.
So to say that we never had that discussion is not true.
Right.
Well, it's never been an agenda item.
Not sure.
I'll just add the discussion, but it's.
It's an old issue.
Yes. Well, it's an old issue, but it's never been an agenda item.
I think everyone's getting tired. This is actually the first time I've used this podium for this sort of thing, and
Who are you?
Who are you?
I'm sorry, it's Dennis Morris in Anderson, as I spoke earlier. I thought I didn't have the second time, but anyway, Dennis Morris, Anderson Road. I have been a part of the inside of the budget process as well as on the outside, and I've been involved with 7 different town managers or city managers over my career, 32 years in public safety. And it's not uncommon for elected officials to use the positions for their own agenda. It's not uncommon for citizens to jump on board when they start to talk about less taxes or problems with the taxings or how people spend money. And I get a little emotional because I've been misquoted. I've been, over the years, probably more than anyone else, had facts twisted, and I'm going to, through transparency, I'm going to deal with it tonight. It's not uncommon for these people to go after the town manager, department heads, anyone they can, whenever they can. It's further not uncommon to twist the facts a little bit, as we've seen just recently, just a little bit, or to imply inappropriate things. It's not uncommon during government processes to do character assassinations. It's pretty common, in fact, and it's not uncommon for that to affect morale, efficiency, even cause morale issues amongst the staff. It's not uncommon to have these actions cost the taxpayers legal fees behind the scenes. Quite often, quite a bit of legal fees. What is uncommon is when citizens come forward like Teresa Sadak, and they speak their mind and say that she's tired of the negativity. There's very many people who get upset, that are busy, that don't come in, that say enough is enough. The negativity over the last few years has got to the point where I'm here to say enough is enough. It's pretty uncommon for me to come up and talk about twisting facts, but the last budget meeting I heard that the fire department had no right, in fact, to spend these CIP money on the facilities. In fact, it was inappropriate. When actually, that was an inappropriate statement. On 3 different meetings over the last several years, I, as chief, have explained the shortcomings of the low bid construction of the public safety building, the furnace failures of that building, as well as District 2. I explained how Gray and Raymond gutted District 2 after 2 different failures up there with the furnaces and froze up the plumbing that Nathan had to help us with. And Gray actually gave us $10,000 towards that process. All public. When the members who make these statements want to cut our CIP, I explained that we needed to go up, not down, because of these issues, and really, selective memory loss, it's very an easy way to twist the facts. Tonight I stand before you to correct some public statements that have been made by a few elected officials over the last few months, maybe a year or 2, and I make the commitment that every time I hear it, I'm going to come in and speak again. So, I never took my family or friends out on the fireboat 4th of July or any other time. There's a logbook to prove it. There's never been a backroom deal to make Chief Tupper my replacement. He worked hard and earned the job. There's never been use of CIP funds on the facility that weren't explained and requested as far back as when Mark Generin was here. The fire department did not exaggerate the problems of radio difficulties in several areas of this town, not even a little bit. In fact, the radio tower people said it was the worst town they've ever dealt with in the whole state because of those hills and valleys. We did not improve District 2 against the regionalization plan in Casco and Naples because they never bought into it, never wanted to do it, and the rough draft never got off the board. And we actually pushed the concept, and we certainly would do everything. But we wouldn't do that without the knowledge of the Board of Selectmen anyway. We not only support the regionalization concept of dispatching, we actually wrote the grant that was copied that allowed County Dispatch Center to retool and become a true regional center that we then joined. Again, speaking our differences of opinion along the way, but as soon as they were ready for us, we were there. When 1 or 2 elected officials are allowed to throw mud, it is a known fact that some mud will stick. And elected officials who are on the board doing positive for the town, they will tire of it, and they probably will not seek re-election, simply feeling they didn't sign up for it. Furthermore, good positive citizens who simply say, I don't need that, won't run in the first place. I say tonight, thank you to those of you who really do think of the town forthright and put it first. Not all the little negative statements, not all the little chippy little things, not rounded up everyone to come in and do what they can to drag down such comments as a lack of confidence in any town government. It's inappropriate when the selectmen just said publicly for the last 7 years how wonderful we've done, the town manager and the staff. You guys gave us direction, we did the work. It's funny how some people take credit for what we do. But under the Freedom of Information Act, I request publicly, not in the back room, to know what additional lawyer fees that we have spent defending and answering these twisted facts, inaccurate statements, and ongoing requests by this group determined to undermine the town government that I so much respect. I gotta tell you why I get emotional. It's BS, and everyone in the room, everyone in this town knows it. We're tired of it, really tired of it. How could we be so wonderful for 7 years, and yet the town manager deserves a vote against his budget every year? Why is it every time we turn around, something I say gets twisted? CIP was not about facilities. Did you ever hear me say that there was no problem with these buildings for the last 4 or 5 years? Every year we talked about it, every single year. I think it's a shame that I have to sit home and watch this stuff and come in and listen to people make these twisted, inappropriate statements over and over again when there's so many of you guys that do a good job, and I want to thank you guys who try. Sorry, I get a little emotional.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? All right. Public comment is closed. If there are no further comments, we'll move along to town manager report.
Well, we had the date for the next regular meeting is April 9th. I've now discovered that's a problem for you, Sam, so I'm now suggesting April 2nd,
Did you already put it in?
if that will work for the rest of you.
April 2nd?
Yeah.
We say yes?
Fine with me?
Okay, so I guess April 2nd it is?
Okay.
All right, Louise mentioned earlier that nomination papers are available on March 19th. We have 2 seats on the Board of Selectmen for a 3-year term, 3 seats on the Budget Finance Committee for a 3-year term, 1 seat on the RSU 14 Board of Directors for a 3-year term. Is that right, Louise, hopefully? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Fiscal warrants?
No warrants.
Pardon?
We warrants last week, sorry, I forgot to take it off.
Okay.
Oh, good news.
Wow.
There's only one thing left. Can we get a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second?
I'm in favor.
Any discussion,
Before
Charlie?
midnight, none.
All right, we're adjourned.